The bustling streets of New York City were alive with their usual chaos. Honking cars, hurried footsteps, and the muffled hum of 1,000 conversations. No one paid attention to the man sitting quietly on the corner of Fifth Avenue, wrapped in an old, tattered coat. His head was bowed, a baseball cap shadowing his face, and his hands clutched a cardboard sign with smudged writing, "Hungary, please help." This man was none other than Elon Musk, one of the world's most recognizable figures. But today, no one recognized him. The idea had struck him like a lightning bolt during a late-night conversation with his close friend and confidant, Tallulah. They had been discussing the struggles of marginalized people in modern society, particularly those who were homeless. Elon, always one for experiments and innovation, decided that the best way to understand their plight was to live it himself. "People see the homeless as invisible," he had said. "What if I could change that? What if I could truly understand what they go through and create a solution that works for them?" Tallulah had laughed nervously. "Elon, you're a billionaire. You'd be recognized in an instant." "Not if I don't look like Elon Musk," he replied with a mischievous grin. And so, here he was, sitting on the cold pavement, blending into the background of the city that never slept. His appearance was carefully crafted. A scraggly fake beard, dirt smudged on his face, and clothes he'd bought from a thrift store. His assistants had been sworn to secrecy, and for the next 7 days, Elon Musk would live as an ordinary man with no home, no money, and no influence. The first few hours were uneventful. People passed him without a glance, their eyes fixed on their phones or the sidewalks ahead. A businessman in a tailored suit stepped over his legs without so much as an apology. A group of teenagers snickered as they walked by, one of them tossing an empty soda can into his lap. Elon felt the sting of humiliation, but he reminded himself that this was the point. He needed to understand the world from this perspective, raw and unfiltered. As the day wore on, hunger began to gnaw at him. He had eaten nothing since breakfast, and the cold November air only made it worse. He glanced at the cup in front of him, holding a single crumpled dollar bill and a few coins. "Hey, buddy," a voice called out. Elon looked up to see a middle-aged man in a denim jacket holding a hot dog. The man placed it in front of him with a sympathetic smile. "Take it. You look like you need it more than I do." Elon blinked, taken aback. "Thank you," he said, his voice hoarse from disuse. The man waved it off. "Hang in there." It was a small act of kindness, but it lit a spark in Elon's chest. He watched the man walk away, realizing that amidst the indifference, humanity still existed in its purest form. That night, as he curled up in a makeshift shelter near a park, Elon's mind raced with questions. If one person could show kindness, why didn't more people? Why did the systems in place, banks, businesses, governments, ignore those who needed them the most? This wasn't just an experiment anymore. It was the beginning of a journey that would shake the foundations of everything he thought he knew. Before he was a man sitting on a cold sidewalk with a cardboard sign, Elon Musk was the tech industry's golden boy, an innovator, dreamer, and disruptor. His name had become synonymous with revolution, from Tesla's electric cars to SpaceX's interplanetary ambitions. Yet, for all his achievements, Elon often felt something was missing. Born in Pretoria, South Africa, Elon's childhood was far from idyllic. He was the quiet, awkward kid who often retreated into his world of books and computers. By the age of 12, he had built and sold a video game, planting the seeds of the entrepreneurial genius he would later become. But that brilliance was tempered by hardships, bullying at school, and a turbulent family life. As he rose to global fame, those struggles became distant memories, buried under layers of wealth and success. But they never truly left him. He often thought back to the moments when he felt unseen and unheard, wondering if those experiences had shaped his relentless drive. In recent months, Elon had found himself questioning his place in the world. For all his accomplishments, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was out of touch with the reality most people lived. The tech world celebrated him as a visionary, but critics often accused him of being disconnected from the struggles of everyday people. The tipping point came during a shareholder meeting at Tesla. A young woman had stood up during the Q&A session, her voice trembling with emotion. "My father worked for a company that Tesla partnered with, she began. When that company downsized, my dad lost his job. He's homeless now. What are you doing to help people like him? Elon's response was measured and polite, emphasizing Tesla's commitment to innovation and job creation. But the question haunted him. He couldn't stop thinking about the woman's father and countless others like him, who had slipped through the cracks of a system designed to reward the fortunate and punish the vulnerable. The final push came when Elon stumbled across an article late one night. The story detailed how a man experiencing homelessness had been denied entry into a bank to open a basic checking account. He had no ID, no address, no collateral, nothing that fit the bank's rigid requirements. The man's dignity had been stripped away, not by an act of cruelty, but by the indifference of a system that didn't see him as a person. Elon closed his laptop and stared at the ceiling of his sprawling mansion. He had all the money, power, and influence in the world, yet he felt powerless to fix this. That was when the idea hit him. If he couldn't understand the problem from the outside, he'd have to step into it himself. The next morning, he called a private meeting with his closest advisors. They were used to Elon's eccentric ideas, but this one left them speechless. "You want to pretend to be homeless?" his CFO asked, incredulous. "I want to be homeless," Elon corrected. "At least for a week. No assistance, no safety net. Just me, the streets, and the system." There was a long silence before Tallulah spoke. "And what do you hope to achieve?" "Perspective," Elon said simply. "If I'm going to build solutions for people, I need to see the world the way they do. Not as Elon Musk, the billionaire, but as a nobody." Despite their reservations, Elon's team eventually agreed to support his plan, though not without precautions. They insisted on a hidden tracker and a safety protocol in case of emergencies. Elon reluctantly agreed, knowing it was the only way to appease them. As he prepared for his experiment, Elon felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. For once, he was venturing into uncharted territory, not as an innovator, but as a man seeking understanding. When the day came, he left his sleek mansion, his tailored suits, and his electric cars behind. Armed with nothing but a few thrift store clothes and a borrowed sleeping bag, Elon Musk stepped out into the streets of New York City. The man who had built rockets to reach Mars was now walking among the invisible people of Earth. The streets of New York buzzed with their usual rhythm, fast, relentless, and indifferent. Elon sat on the corner of Fifth Avenue, clutching a tattered backpack that contained everything he'd allowed himself for this experiment. A water bottle, a second-hand blanket, and a worn notebook. The first day had already tested his resolve. The cold concrete under him was an unwelcome contrast to the plush comfort of his usual surroundings. But the most jarring part wasn't the physical discomfort. It was the feeling of being utterly invisible. Pedestrians walked by as if he didn't exist, their eyes sliding over him like he was just another piece of urban scenery. Elon's thoughts drifted to the article that had sparked this journey. The story was about James Milligan, a former construction worker who had been evicted from his apartment after losing his job. With nowhere to go, James ended up on the streets, relying on shelters and soup kitchens. He tried to open a bank account to save the little money he earned doing odd jobs, but without a permanent address or valid ID, the bank refused him. "I'm not asking for a handout," James had said in the article. "I'm asking for a chance. But the system doesn't care." That line had stayed with Elon. As he read it, he couldn't help but see the parallels to his own philosophy. He had built his career on the belief that systems, whether financial, technological, or social, could always be improved. Yet here was a glaring example of a system that had failed to adapt, leaving people like James trapped. But it wasn't just James's story. Over the years, Elon had heard countless tales of people struggling to navigate a world that seemed designed to work against them. He had read about veterans denied loans, single mothers turned away from housing applications, and entire families falling through the cracks of a broken system. Sitting on the sidewalk now, he watched as a man in a suit strode out of a nearby bank, his face etched with satisfaction. A leather briefcase swung in his hand, the emblem of a successful transaction. The man passed by without so much as a glance at Elon. Moments later, a young woman approached the same bank, clutching a worn envelope. She looked nervous, her eyes darting around as if expecting to be turned away. Elon couldn't hear the exchange through the thick glass doors, but he could see the body language, the way the teller shook her head and pointed toward the exit. The woman walked out moments later, her shoulders slumped in defeat. Elon's jaw tightened. This wasn't just about bureaucracy or inefficiency. It was about a lack of empathy. By midday, hunger gnawed at him again. He hadn't eaten since the hot dog a stranger had given him the previous evening. He spotted a small diner across the street and counted the coins in his cup. $1.57, not enough for a meal, but perhaps enough for a cup of coffee. Inside the diner, the smell of sizzling bacon and fresh coffee was overwhelming. Elon approached the counter, keeping his head low. "Coffee, please," he said, sliding the coins across the counter. The cashier, a young man with tired eyes, hesitated before taking the money. He poured a small cup and handed it over without a word. Elon muttered a thank you and sat at a corner booth, sipping the lukewarm liquid slowly, savoring every drop. As he sat there, he overheard a conversation at a nearby table. Two men in business attire were discussing a merger deal. "These banks are making a killing," one of them said. "Fees, interest rates, you name it. It's all about maximizing margins." Elon frowned. The words felt like a confirmation of everything he had come to suspect. For all the resources banks possessed, they seemed more interested in profit than in helping people. He pulled out his notebook and began jotting down observations. No empathy in the system. Barriers, ID, address, credit scores. People want to contribute but are blocked at every turn. The more he wrote, the clearer his vision became. This wasn't just an experiment anymore. It was a call to action. Elon realized that if he truly wanted to make a difference, he couldn't just observe. He had to act. Finishing his coffee, he stepped out into the cold again, his mind racing with possibilities. Somewhere in this city was the answer he was looking for, and he was determined to find it. The following day began like the last, with the cold morning air biting at Elon's skin and the persistent growl of hunger in his stomach. His cardboard sign, which now bore faint smudges of rain, lay propped against his knees. He had spent the night under a bridge, shivering in his thin blanket. The ground was harder than he expected, the noise of the city an unrelenting backdrop. But today, something was different. "Morning," a voice said, cutting through the haze of his thoughts. Elon looked up to see a wiry man with a weathered face and a grin that revealed several missing teeth. He held two steaming cups of coffee, one of which he extended toward Elon. "Name's Joe," the man said as Elon hesitated. "You look like you could use this." Elon took the cup, its warmth seeping into his frozen hands. "Thanks," he said, his voice still rough from the cold. "I'm Chris." He had chosen the alias deliberately, wanting to ensure no one would connect him to his real identity. Joe chuckled as he sat down beside him, the movements fluid despite his apparent age and the wear on his body. "Chris, huh? Well, Chris, you're new to this corner. Most folks stick to their usual spots." Elon nodded. "First time here." Joe sipped his coffee and studied Elon for a moment. "You don't look like the usual type. What's your story?" Elon hesitated. He hadn't anticipated how hard it would be to fabricate a believable backstory. Finally, he said, "Lost my job. Couldn't pay rent. Been trying to figure things out." Joe nodded slowly, as if the story was all too familiar. That's how it starts for most of us. One bad turn, and the world just stops caring. The two sat in silence for a while, watching the steady stream of people passing by. Joe eventually broke it. "You ever been inside a bank?" he asked. Elon glanced at him, startled. "Why do you ask?" Joe chuckled bitterly. "You'd think, being homeless, a guy wouldn't need a bank. But it's the opposite. Can't get a job without an account, can't save money, can't do anything. But try walking in there looking like this." He gestured to his ragged clothes. "They'll toss you out before you can say checking account." Elon leaned forward, intrigued. "What do you mean?" Joe's eyes narrowed. "I mean they don't see us as people. No ID, no address, no credit. You're nothing to them. Doesn't matter if you've got cash in hand, they won't touch it. And don't get me started on payday lenders. Those vultures will rob you blind." The frustration in Joe's voice struck a chord with Elon. This was exactly the kind of insight he had hoped to gain. I've tried, Joe continued. Had a couple $100 saved up from day jobs. Thought I'd put it in an account, maybe try to get back on my feet. The teller looked at me like I was dirt. Elon frowned. What did they say? Joe shrugged. No ID, no account. Rules are rules. So I spent the cash trying to stay alive. Gone in a week. Elon's mind raced. Joe's story wasn't just a reflection of his own observations. It was proof that the system was fundamentally broken. Banks, which should have been a lifeline, had become barriers for people like Joe. What would you do, Elon asked slowly, if you could open an account tomorrow? No strings attached. Joe laughed, a short, dry sound. I'd save. Maybe get a place to stay, even if it's just a room. From there, who knows? A job, a normal life. But that's a dream, ain't it? Elon didn't answer. His thoughts were already racing ahead, envisioning a world where Joe's dream wasn't just possible but standard. As the day wore on, Joe shared more of his experiences. The shelters, the odd jobs, the small acts of kindness that had kept him going. Elon listened intently, scribbling notes in his mind. Joe had no idea who he was talking to, but Elon knew this conversation would shape the future in ways neither of them could yet imagine. Before parting ways, Joe clapped Elon on the shoulder. Take care of yourself, Chris. These streets don't get any kinder. You too, Joe, Elon replied, watching as the man disappeared into the crowd. Elon looked down at the cup Joe had given him, still warm in his hands. It wasn't just coffee. It was a reminder of the resilience and humanity that thrived even in the harshest circumstances. For the first time since starting this experiment, Elon felt a flicker of hope. This wasn't just about observing anymore. It was about creating change. The next morning, Elon stood in front of a towering bank building, its glass facade gleaming in the sunlight. The revolving doors spun ceaselessly as sharply dressed patrons came and went. Elon's pulse quickened. For the first time in years, he felt genuinely nervous. Dressed in his thrift store clothes, with unkempt hair and a weary face, he looked every part the homeless man he had become for this experiment. He clutched a few crumpled bills in his hand, money he had collected from a combination of begging and odd tasks. It wasn't much, but it was enough for what he intended, to open a basic checking account. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside. The warmth of the lobby enveloped him, a stark contrast to the biting cold outside. Polished floors reflected the high ceilings, and the air smelled faintly of leather and expensive cologne. Elon approached the reception desk, where a middle-aged woman with perfectly coiffed hair and a tight smile greeted him. "Good morning," she said, her eyes flickering briefly over his appearance. "How can I help you?" "I'd like to open a checking account," Elon replied, keeping his tone steady. The woman hesitated, her smile faltering for a fraction of a second. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," he said, shifting uncomfortably, "but I was hoping someone could help me. I have cash to deposit." The receptionist's polite mask slipped further. "Do you have an ID and proof of address?" Elon shook his head. "I don't have those right now, but I can verify who I am." The woman's smile disappeared entirely. "I'm sorry, sir. We require identification and a permanent address to open an account. It's bank policy." "But I have money," Elon pressed, holding up the crumpled bills. "Isn't there any way to start an account? I just need a place to save this." Her eyes darted around, clearly uncomfortable. "I understand, but we have regulations we must follow. If you can come back with the proper documentation." "I don't have any documentation," Elon interrupted, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "That's the problem. What are people like me supposed to do?" The receptionist glanced at a nearby security guard, who had started to take notice of their conversation. "I'm very sorry, sir. There's nothing I can do." Feeling a flush of humiliation, Elon turned and left the building. The cold hit him like a slap as he stepped back onto the street. He sank onto a nearby bench, his mind reeling. He had expected resistance, but experiencing it firsthand was a different matter. The sheer indifference, the polite dismissal, it was more dehumanizing than he had imagined. Pulling out his notebook, he scribbled furiously. Lack of empathy and policy. No alternative solutions offered. regulations designed for exclusion, not inclusion. The encounter solidified what he had begun to suspect. The system wasn't just flawed, it was actively hostile to those on the margins. As he sat there, lost in thought, a man in a tailored suit walked out of the bank, his phone pressed to his ear. He paused nearby, seemingly oblivious to Elon's presence. "It's all about risk management," the man said loudly. "We don't touch clients without solid documentation. Too much liability." Elon clenched his jaw. Liability. That single word encapsulated the problem. People like him, or the version of him he was pretending to be, weren't seen as individuals with stories and struggles. They were risks, liabilities, inconveniences. A plan began to form in his mind. He didn't just want to highlight the problem. He wanted to design a solution, one that bypassed the traditional barriers and provided people like Joe and countless others with a real chance. For now, though, he had to endure. The experiment wasn't over. He needed to gather more data, more experiences, to truly understand the depth of the problem. With renewed determination, Elon stood up and walked back into the flow of the city, blending into the faceless crowd. He wasn't just a spectator in this story anymore. He was part of it, and he was determined to rewrite its ending. The days dragged on as Elon continued his experiment, immersing himself deeper into the world of those who lived on society's edges. Each moment was a lesson, each encounter a window into lives shaped by resilience, frustration, and fleeting kindness. He had settled into a makeshift routine. By morning, he would wake from his spot under a bridge or in the shadow of a skyscraper. The cold concrete and the sharp ache in his back were relentless reminders of his new reality. By day, he walked the streets, observing, talking to others in similar circumstances, and gathering insights about their struggles. By night, he scribbled his thoughts into his battered notebook under the flickering light of a street lamp. One afternoon, he met Clara, a single mother who sat on the corner with her young son, Liam. Her cardboard sign read, "Need work. Have skills. Please help." Elon offered her the granola bar he had saved from a soup kitchen earlier in the day. She hesitated, but accepted it with a grateful nod. "Thank you," Clara said, her voice weary but warm. "It's for him, not me." Liam, no more than 5 years old, clutched the granola bar tightly, his wide eyes darting between Elon and his mother. "What happened?" Elon asked softly. Clara sighed. "I worked as a waitress, but the diner shut down during the pandemic. No savings, no family to turn to. We lost our apartment a month later." She paused, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I tried everything, temp jobs, shelters, even churches. But it's never enough. And the banks? They won't even let me open an account without a permanent address. How am I supposed to save or cash a check?" Her story mirrored Joe's, but carried an additional layer of urgency. Elon's heart ached as he listened. A mother doing everything in her power to protect her child, but blocked at every turn. "I've got a plan," Clara continued, her voice tinged with both hope and despair. "If I can save enough to rent a room, just a room, maybe I can get back on my feet. But without a place, it's like the world doesn't even see us." Elon nodded, fighting back the urge to reveal who he was or promise her help. This experiment wasn't about shortcuts or charity. It was about understanding the depth of the problem so he could create meaningful change. "Clara," he said after a pause, "if you could change one thing about how the system works, what would it be?" She didn't hesitate. "Access. Give people like me a way to save what little we have. It's not much, but it's ours. If we could just hold on to it, maybe we'd have a fighting chance." Her words lingered with him long after they parted ways. Access. That was the crux of it. The system wasn't just unkind. It was inaccessible to those who needed it most. Later that evening, Elon lined up outside a soup kitchen. The line stretched around the block, a visible reminder of how many people the system had failed. Inside, the air was warm and smelled of vegetable stew. Volunteers moved with practiced efficiency, serving bowls of soup and slices of bread to the hungry crowd. Elon struck up a conversation with a man named Terry, a former accountant who had lost everything after a messy divorce and a bout with depression. "I had money once," Terry said bitterly. "A house, a car, a 401k. But life has a funny way of pulling the rug out from under you. Now, I'm just here. What do you think went wrong? Elon asked. Terry shook his head. It's not one thing. It's a domino effect. Once you fall behind, the system doesn't let you catch up. No address, no ID, no bank account. You can't apply for jobs. You can't even prove you exist. You're just gone. That phrase, prove you exist, struck a chord with Elon. He scribbled it into his notebook that night, alongside Clara's plea for access and Joe's frustration with risk management. As Elon reflected on the stories he had heard, the beginnings of an idea began to form. What if there was a way to bypass traditional barriers? A system that didn't require an address or a credit score. He envisioned a digital platform, accessible via mobile devices or kiosks, that could provide the unbanked with basic financial services. Users could create accounts using biometric data, fingerprints, facial recognition, or even voice authentication, bypassing the need for traditional forms of identification. Funds could be deposited at partner locations like convenience stores or community centers. Withdrawals could be made with a unique code sent to their phones. The system would offer small, no-interest loans to help people transition into stable housing or employment. He scribbled furiously in his notebook, biometric ID for account creation. Partner with community organizations for deposits/withdrawals. Focus on accessibility and dignity. This wasn't just an idea anymore. It was a mission. By the end of the week, Elon's initial frustration had transformed into determination. He had a clearer understanding of the challenges and a growing vision for the solution. But he knew the experiment wasn't over yet. There were more stories to hear, more lessons to learn. As he lay under the bridge that night, listening to the distant hum of traffic, he felt a strange mix of exhaustion and hope. The world might be broken, but it wasn't beyond repair, and he was determined to play his part in fixing it. The following morning, Elon set out with a new goal: to explore more of the systemic barriers that prevented people from escaping the cycle of homelessness. Armed with his notebook and a growing sense of purpose, he made his way to a nearby job fair, a place he had heard about from others on the streets. The fair was held in a local community center. From the outside, it looked promising: banners advertising employment opportunities, friendly volunteers handing out pamphlets, and a steady stream of job seekers entering the building. Elon hesitated before stepping inside. His thrift store clothing hung awkwardly on his frame, and his unshaven face carried the unmistakable signs of his days on the streets. The polished crowd inside contrasted sharply with his appearance, but he pressed on. Elon approached a booth where a company was advertising warehouse positions. The recruiter, a young woman with a bright smile and a clipboard, greeted him. "Hi there. Are you interested in applying?" "Yes," Elon replied, his voice steady despite his nerves. "I'm looking for work." She handed him a form. "Great. Just fill this out, and we'll go from there. Do you have your resume with you?" Elon shook his head. "No, I don't have one, but I have experience." The recruiter nodded politely but visibly hesitated. "No problem. Do you have an ID with you? And we'll also need a proof of address." Elon frowned. "I don't have those right now. Is there another way to apply?" Her smile faltered. "Unfortunately, we need those documents to process your application. It's company policy." Elon felt a familiar wave of frustration. "I have skills," he said, his voice tinged with desperation. "I'm willing to work hard. Isn't there some way to start without all the paperwork?" The recruiter's expression softened, but her tone remained firm. "I'm really sorry. Maybe when you get everything sorted, you can come back." He walked away, his shoulders heavy. The fair was bustling with opportunity for those who had the right credentials, but for someone like him, someone playing the role of an invisible man, it was a dead end. Determined to learn more, Elon decided to visit a local shelter. The building was modest, with peeling paint and a sagging roof, but it was a lifeline for many. Inside, the air was warm and smelled faintly of disinfectant. He met Maria, a social worker who had been helping unhoused individuals for over a decade. Her energy was palpable despite the clear strain of her work. "What's the biggest obstacle people face when trying to rebuild their lives?" Elon asked her. Maria sighed, running a hand through her short, graying hair. "Access. to everything: housing, jobs, healthcare. But it all starts with ID. Without it, you're invisible. No one will hire you, rent to you, or even let you open a bank account. What about shelters like this? Can't they help people get IDs? We try, Maria said, her voice weary. But it's a slow process. Government bureaucracy is a nightmare, especially if someone's documents have been lost or stolen. And even when we succeed, it's often too late. They've already fallen further into the cracks. Elon nodded, scribbling notes in his mental ledger. ID was clearly a cornerstone issue. Without it, nothing else mattered. Later that day, Elon visited a payday lender, one of the few places willing to deal with people in his assumed position. The neon sign in the window advertised, "Cash advances. No credit? No problem." The woman behind the counter greeted him with a wide smile. "Looking for a loan?" "Yes," Elon replied cautiously. "How does it work?" She handed him a flyer. "It's simple. You borrow up to $500, and we'll just need a pay stub or proof of regular income. Repay it in 2 weeks with a small fee." Elon scanned the flyer. The small fee amounted to an interest rate of over 400% annually. "What happens if I can't repay it in 2 weeks?" he asked. The woman's smile didn't waver. "We can roll it over into a new loan. Of course, there's an additional fee for that." Elon felt a chill. This wasn't a lifeline. It was a trap designed to exploit desperation. He declined the loan and left, his mind racing. That night, as Elon sat on a park bench, he reviewed the day's encounters. The barriers were interconnected, forming a web that was nearly impossible to escape. No ID meant no job, no bank account, no housing. Payday lenders preyed on those with no other options, trapping them in cycles of debt. Even well-meaning organizations like shelters and job fairs were hamstrung by systemic inefficiencies. Elon jotted down a question in his notebook. How do we create a system that works for everyone, not just those who already have access? He didn't have all the answers yet, but the pieces of the puzzle were becoming clearer. If the existing structures couldn't be reformed, perhaps it was time to build something entirely new. The road ahead would be long and filled with challenges, but Elon Musk wasn't one to back down from a fight, especially one that could change lives. Elon spent the next day visiting a community resource center he had heard about from Clara. The center, nestled between a laundromat and an old diner, was unassuming but busy. Inside, volunteers were helping people fill out job applications, offering free meals, and directing them to services ranging from legal aid to temporary housing. A sign on the wall caught his attention: Digital Literacy Class, Empowering the Future. Below it was a smaller note: "No computer? No problem. All are welcome." Intrigued, Elon stepped into a small room where a group of people sat in front of refurbished laptops. A young man named Darnell stood at the front of the room, explaining the basics of creating an email account. "This is how you connect to opportunities," Darnell said, his tone encouraging. "A simple email address can open doors: jobs, housing, even staying in touch with family." Elon watched as attendees, many of them older or visibly uncomfortable with technology, slowly followed Darnell's instructions. One woman raised her hand and asked nervously, "What if I don't have a phone to check my email?" Darnell smiled gently. "We can set you up with free access here. You can come in any time to check your messages." For the first time in days, Elon felt a flicker of hope. This was a practical solution, one that addressed immediate needs without requiring unattainable prerequisites. After the class, Elon approached Darnell. "You're doing good work here," Elon said. Darnell shrugged. "I try. It's not much, but it helps." "What's the biggest challenge you face?" Elon asked. Darnell didn't hesitate. "Resources. We can teach people how to use tech, but a lot of them don't even have phones or internet access at home. We're fighting a battle with one hand tied behind our back." Elon scribbled furiously in his notebook. The idea he had been mulling over, the one about creating an accessible financial platform, could integrate with something like this. If technology was a barrier, then the solution had to include free or low-cost access to devices and the internet. "Why do you do it?" Elon asked. Darnell smiled, his eyes softening. "Because I've been there. I know what it's like to feel invisible. If I can help even one person feel seen, it's worth it." That evening, Elon returned to the streets with a renewed sense of purpose. He sat down next to Joe, who had just returned from a grueling day of collecting cans. "How'd it go?" Elon asked. Joe sighed. "Got enough for dinner, but not much else. You know how it is." Elon nodded. "Joe, if there was a way to save your money without needing a bank account, would you use it?" Joe looked at him skeptically. "What do you mean?" "Imagine a place where you could store your cash digitally, like on your phone or at a kiosk. You wouldn't need an address or ID, just a way to prove it's you, maybe a fingerprint or something." Joe frowned. "Sounds too good to be true. But yeah, I'd try it. Anything's better than hiding cash under a bench." Elon smiled. That was all the encouragement he needed. Back in his makeshift camp that night, Elon sketched out the framework for what he was now calling Access Plus, a digital financial platform designed specifically for the unbanked. The core principles were clear. 1. Inclusivity. No ID or address required. Biometric authentication for security. 2. Accessibility. Free to use with community kiosks and partnerships with local centers like the one Darnell ran. 3. Empowerment. Tools to help users manage and grow their finances, including savings goals and microloans. He envisioned kiosks placed strategically in community centers, libraries, and shelters. Users could deposit cash, check balances, and even pay bills. The platform would also connect them to job listings, housing opportunities, and other resources. But there were still questions to answer. How would he fund it? What partnerships would be necessary? How could he scale it without compromising its core mission? These were challenges for tomorrow. For now, he felt a rare sense of clarity. As the city settled into the quiet hum of the night, Elon lay back on his tattered sleeping bag, staring up at the stars. The experiment was far from over, but he could see the path forward. For the first time since he had embarked on this journey, he allowed himself to dream. Not just of solving problems, but of creating a future where no one was invisible. And this was just the beginning. Elon woke up the next morning with a renewed sense of urgency. His vision for Access Plus was growing clearer by the day, but ideas weren't enough. It was time to test them in the real world. He needed feedback, not just from the unhoused community, but also from potential collaborators. The Community Resource Center, where Darnell worked, seemed like the perfect place to start. Elon made his way back, weaving through the morning bustle of downtown. "Darnell," Elon said as he approached the young instructor after another digital literacy class, "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about resources, access, and how people need tools they can actually use." Darnell raised an eyebrow. "You've got an idea, don't you?" Elon nodded. "I do. What if we built a system that didn't rely on traditional banking? Something like a digital wallet, but tailored for people without IDs, credit, or permanent addresses. It would let them save, make transactions, and even get small loans." Darnell's expression shifted from skepticism to curiosity. "Okay, keep talking." Elon explained the concept in more detail, sketching out diagrams on a scrap piece of paper. He described biometric authentication to replace ID requirements, partnerships with shelters and community centers to serve as access points, and a simple user interface designed for people who weren't tech-savvy. "I'm calling it Access Plus," Elon concluded. "What do you think?" Darnell leaned back, crossing his arms. "It sounds great in theory, but theory doesn't mean much out here. How would it actually work? And how do you get people to trust it?" "I was hoping you'd help me figure that out," Elon replied. Darnell chuckled. "You've got guts. I'll give you that. All right, let's test it. But you'll need to talk to people first. See if they'd even use something like this." Elon nodded. That was exactly what he planned to do. Over the next few days, Elon spoke with everyone he could: Clara, Joe, Terry, and dozens of others he met on the streets or in the resource center. Clara was skeptical at first. Digital money? What if it gets hacked or lost? I don't trust anything I can't hold in my hands. Joe saw the potential but had concerns. Sounds good, but where's the catch? There's always a catch. Terry, the former accountant, was more optimistic. If it's secure and easy to use, it could work. But you'll need to educate people. Most of us don't have the time or energy to figure out complicated systems. Each conversation added depth to Elon's understanding of the challenges he'd face. Trust and education were recurring themes. People didn't just need access. They needed to feel confident that the system wouldn't exploit or abandon them. Darnell offered an idea. Why don't we start small? A pilot program right here at the center. We can use it to gather data, refine the system, and prove that it works. Elon agreed. What do we need to get started? A prototype, Darnell said. Something basic that people can use. And funding, of course. Do you have any connections? Elon hesitated, debating whether to reveal his true identity. But he decided against it for now. This project needed to stand on its own merits, not his reputation or resources. I'll figure something out, Elon replied. That night, Elon sketched out a basic prototype for Access Plus. It would include 1. Simple enrollment. Users could sign up with just a fingerprint and a name or nickname. 2. Cash deposits and withdrawals. Community centers like Darnell's could act as hubs for transactions. 3. Savings goals. A feature to encourage users to set aside small amounts for specific needs, like housing or transportation. 4. Microloans. A limited pool of funds for small, no-interest loans, overseen by the community center to ensure fairness. Elon's initial design wasn't flashy, but it was functional. He envisioned using refurbished tablets or smartphones to run the software and partnering with local businesses to pilot the deposit and withdrawal system. The following day, Elon was approached by a man named Marcus, who had been watching him talk to others at the resource center. "You've been asking a lot of questions," Marcus said, his tone wary. "What's your angle?" "No angle," Elon replied. "I'm trying to create something that can help people. Something real." Marcus studied him for a moment before nodding. "All right. If you're serious, you should talk to Miss Evelyn. She runs the community bank uptown. She's one of the few people who actually gives a damn about folks like us." Elon made a note to visit Miss Evelyn. If he could win her support, it might open new doors for Access Plus. As the sun set over the city, Elon reflected on how much had changed since he began this journey. What had started as a simple experiment to understand homelessness had evolved into a mission to create systemic change. The first ripple had been cast, but the real work was just beginning. The next day, Elon made his way uptown to meet Miss Evelyn. The community bank was a small but well-known establishment, nestled between an old bookstore and a coffee shop. Despite its modest exterior, there was an undeniable sense of purpose about the place. As he walked in, the soft hum of conversation and the sound of a cash register in the background gave the impression of a place that was not just about business, but about community. Miss Evelyn was exactly as Marcus had described, an older woman with sharp eyes and a warm smile. She was behind the counter, sorting through some paperwork, when Elon approached her. "Excuse me, Miss Evelyn," he asked. She looked up, her smile never wavering. "Yes, how can I help you, son?" Elon introduced himself and quickly explained the concept of Access Plus, a digital platform designed to help people who lacked traditional IDs or access to banks. He pitched the idea with clarity and passion, detailing how it would address key issues like the lack of access to financial services, the need for safe transactions, and the ability to build trust in an often neglected community. Miss Evelyn listened intently, her fingers pausing on the paperwork. When Elon finished, she leaned back in her chair and folded her hands. "You've got a good idea," she said slowly, "but that's not enough. We've been burned before by systems promising to help. The people you're talking about, most of them don't trust banks, and they don't trust anyone who isn't part of their community. You're going to have to show them that Access Plus isn't just another pipe dream." Elon felt the weight of her words. She was right. Trust had to be earned, not given. "How do I start?" Miss Evelyn smiled again. "Start small. Come by the bank on Saturday, there's a community meeting, and I'll introduce you. Let's see if we can get people on board. You'll need more than just a good idea. You need buy-in. You need their stories, their voices. And you need to be transparent." Elon nodded. This was more than just a technical problem. It was a human one. To make Access Plus work, he needed the people it was meant to help to see its value, to believe it would improve their lives. The following Saturday, Elon returned to the community bank. The meeting room was small, filled with mismatched chairs and a circle of people chatting quietly among themselves. When Miss Evelyn introduced him, the room fell silent. Elon took a deep breath. I know many of you may not trust systems that are meant to help, and I understand that. But I'm here to show you that there's a way we can do things differently. He went on to explain Access Plus again, but this time he made sure to include the human side, why he was doing it, the problems he'd seen firsthand, and how he wanted to change the way people were treated by traditional financial institutions. I've seen how difficult it is for people to get by without access to basic financial services, Elon continued. I've seen how easy it is for systems to forget about the most vulnerable. Access Plus is meant to fix that. It's meant to give you the tools to make your lives easier, and we're going to build it together. The silence in the room lingered for a moment, but then one by one, people began to speak up. I've been homeless for 5 years, a man named Roger said, his voice steady but tinged with sadness. I can't open a bank account because I don't have an address, and I don't trust payday lenders. I keep my money in a sock, and every time I need to pay for something, I worry it'll be stolen. Another woman, Angela, nodded in agreement. I've had to use a check cashing service that took 20% of my paycheck. If something like this could help me save, I'd give it a try. As the group shared their stories, Elon realized just how much they needed something like Access Plus. The stories varied, but the underlying theme was the same. Without a trusted, accessible platform, people were forced to rely on costly or dangerous alternatives. After the meeting, Miss Evelyn pulled him aside. You did well, but this is just the start. People are skeptical, but they're also desperate for a change. If you can prove that Access Plus will actually help them, you'll gain their trust. But don't expect it to happen overnight. Elon nodded, grateful for her wisdom. He now knew he had to focus on transparency, showing people that Access Plus wasn't just another idea, but a solution that could improve their daily lives. With Miss Evelyn's support, Elon began to move forward with his plans. He organized a small pilot program using the community bank's resources. A few people from the meeting had agreed to test the system, offering Elon valuable feedback. The first hurdle was the kiosk. Elon and Darnell worked together to install a simple digital interface at the community center, where people could sign up for Access Plus using their fingerprints for identification. Elon made sure the system was simple to use. No frills, no complexity, just basic functionality. The first few days were slow. People came in, but many hesitated to try. However, with Miss Evelyn's endorsement, word began to spread. Slowly, more and more people started signing up for Access Plus, eager to experience what it could offer. As the pilot progressed, the feedback was invaluable. People found it easier to deposit their cash without worrying about it being stolen. Some were excited about the microloans, seeing it as an opportunity to break free from payday lenders. Others simply appreciated the convenience of having a secure place to store their money. But Elon knew there was still work to be done. While Access Plus had potential, it was clear that the community needed more than just a digital wallet. They needed education on how to manage their finances, how to set goals, and how to rebuild trust in financial systems. Sitting down that evening, Elon reflected on how far he'd come. The journey had been long, and the challenges were far from over. But for the first time since he began this project, he felt a deep sense of purpose. He wasn't just creating technology, he was helping people rebuild their lives, one small step at a time. The ripple had become a wave, and this wave was only just beginning. The success of the pilot program spread quickly through the community, and soon, other organizations and shelters started expressing interest in Access Plus. Elon knew this was the tipping point, but it was also a critical moment. He had to scale up and ensure that the system could handle a larger number of users. More than just a digital wallet, it was becoming a lifeline. Miss Evelyn's community bank had become a central hub for Access Plus, and Elon was eager to get the system working in more places. But to do that, he would need to integrate with other local services, shelters, food banks, medical clinics, and even employers who hired people from the unhoused community. The more touchpoints Access Plus had, the more it could impact people's lives. Elon's first meeting was with Leah, the director of a local nonprofit that provided job placement services for the homeless. She was initially skeptical about a digital solution, but after hearing Elon's vision, she saw its potential. I've spent years working with people who just need a hand up, Leah said, sitting across from Elon in the small, sunlit meeting room of her nonprofit's office. But we've always been stuck. How do you help someone who doesn't have a bank account or a steady address or even the resources to get the basics in place? If Access Plus could work for them, maybe it really could be a game changer. They talked through the specifics of how Access Plus could be integrated with Leah's job programs. One of the biggest barriers for her clients had been the inability to receive paychecks, since many employers required a traditional bank account. If Access Plus could offer an alternative, she was willing to help spread the word. Okay, let's try it. But you'll need to make sure it works smoothly, Leah said, her face serious but hopeful. As Elon worked on scaling the system, he realized that there were still technical challenges to overcome. The infrastructure wasn't as solid as it needed to be for larger numbers, and with multiple organizations involved, there was a need for more robust data management and security protocols. Elon called in some of his engineers to help. They worked late into the night, coding, debugging, and testing the system. They also brought in some experts to ensure that user data would be kept secure. This was crucial, as the people using Access Plus had to trust that their money, no matter how little, was safe. You're not just making a tech product, Elon, one of his engineers, Raj, said as they pored over the design. You're building trust. That's the hardest part. If you break that, you break the whole system. Elon nodded in agreement. He had seen firsthand how quickly trust could be shattered in this community. He couldn't afford to fail. After weeks of preparation, the expanded version of Access Plus was ready for its first large-scale trial. Elon and Leah organized a special event at the community center where they'd bring together job seekers, homeless individuals, and service providers to help people sign up for the system. The day of the event, Elon arrived early. Tables were set up with pamphlets explaining Access Plus, and volunteers helped people through the sign-up process. Leah stood by Elon's side, speaking to anyone who seemed hesitant, answering questions, and reassuring them that the system was safe. At first, the turnout was smaller than they hoped, with only a handful of people showing up. But as word spread, the lines grew. One woman, Sarah, had recently been laid off from a temporary job and couldn't get another without a bank account. She had been living in a shelter and was desperate for a way to save her money safely. "I've heard about Access Plus," Sarah said, nervously tapping her foot. "Is it really that easy to use? I'm not good with all this tech stuff." Elon smiled, showing her the simple interface. "It's designed for everyone, no matter their experience with technology. You can sign up with just your fingerprint, and from there, it's simple. You can store money, send payments, even apply for a small loan if you need it." She hesitated, but with a gentle nudge from Leah, she decided to try it. "I'll give it a shot," Sarah said. The sign-up process was smooth, and within moments, Sarah had a functioning Access Plus account. The look on her face was a mix of disbelief and relief. "This is it? I don't need a bank account?" "Nope," Elon said. "Just your fingerprint and some basic info. That's it." The event continued through the afternoon, with dozens of people signing up and learning how to use the system. Elon and Leah had set up a support booth, where volunteers helped anyone who had trouble navigating the interface. There were a few hiccups, of course. Some people needed more time to understand the process, but overall, the response was overwhelmingly positive. As the weeks went by, Access Plus began to pick up more and more momentum. Leah's nonprofit became one of the system's largest partners, and the local shelters were slowly starting to integrate the program into their daily operations. The first wave of users began to see the impact of Access Plus in real life, small successes that had a big ripple effect. Terry, the former accountant who had helped test Access Plus in the early days, became one of the system's biggest advocates. He used his own account to help others understand the process, and word spread through the local community that Access Plus was legitimate and easy to use. "I can finally pay my rent without worrying about payday loans," Terry said one afternoon, sitting in the same community center where he'd first met Elon. "This thing's a game changer. It's not perfect, but it's the best thing I've had in years." Encouraged by the success, Elon worked with Leah to expand the system's services. They added features like budgeting tools, educational resources on financial literacy, and even job listings that connected directly with Access Plus users. "People don't just need money," Leah pointed out. "They need hope. They need the skills to build a better future. If Access Plus can provide that, it'll make a real difference." One evening, as Elon sat in his office reflecting on the progress of Access Plus, He received a message from Darnell. It was simple but powerful. People are starting to believe. You're doing it, Elon. This could really work. Elon smiled. For the first time, he felt like he was on the right path. Access Plus wasn't just about technology, it was about empowerment. It was about building trust, giving people control over their lives, and showing them that change was possible. The wave had grown stronger, and Elon knew it was just the beginning. There were many more challenges ahead, but with each step, Access Plus was proving that even the most underserved communities deserved a chance to be part of the future. And as Elon looked out over the city, he couldn't help but wonder, how many more waves of change could Access Plus create? With Access Plus slowly but surely making a mark in the local community, Elon knew the road ahead would only get tougher. But the impact was undeniable. More people were signing up, utilizing the system to save money, get jobs, and start to rebuild their lives. As positive as it was, Elon understood that scaling to other cities, and eventually nationwide, would be a monumental task. The system was in its infancy, and while the feedback from users was overwhelmingly positive, there were concerns about its sustainability. Miss Evelyn, who had remained a key ally and supporter, was quick to remind him that nothing, especially something as revolutionary as Access Plus, was ever truly easy to scale. "It's working here because you've built trust," she said one afternoon, sitting with Elon at her office in the community bank. "But in other cities? Other communities? It's going to be different." Elon listened carefully. "I know. It's not just about tech. It's about relationships. We can't rush this. We need to move thoughtfully, build those relationships slowly, and make sure the system remains responsive to the needs of each community." Miss Evelyn gave a knowing nod. "Exactly. That's the real challenge. Each community has its own unique needs, and Access Plus will have to adapt to that. Be ready for setbacks, but also remember that the successes will be worth it." While Elon had been focusing on local communities, Darnell and the development team had been quietly expanding the technical infrastructure to prepare for a broader launch. They had partnered with a few tech companies that offered cloud storage solutions and security services. It was a big leap, but it was the only way to ensure that Access Plus could scale quickly without compromising on security or performance. The team began discussing expansion into other cities, first New York, then Chicago, and eventually Los Angeles. These cities were large, diverse, and included significant populations who could benefit from Access Plus. But before any expansion could happen, they needed to ensure that the system worked flawlessly. Elon and the team worked tirelessly on improvements. They refined the user interface to make it even more intuitive, added layers of encryption to further protect user data, and incorporated feedback from the communities they were already serving. They also began forging partnerships with local shelters, food banks, and employers in these new cities, ensuring Access Plus would be embraced as part of a broader ecosystem. The growth was exciting, but not without challenges. As Elon and his team prepared to roll out Access Plus in New York City, they faced an unexpected hurdle, a lawsuit. One of the largest financial institutions in the country, a massive multinational bank, had filed a complaint. They argued that Access Plus was a direct competitor to traditional banking services and that it violated several regulations by allowing users to deposit money without opening a traditional bank account. The legal threat shook the team. A lawsuit from such a powerful institution could not only delay their expansion but could also potentially shut down Access Plus altogether. The press was quick to pick up the story, and soon, Access Plus was under intense scrutiny. Elon gathered the team in a conference room, his mind racing. "This isn't just about a legal challenge. It's about protecting what we've built," he said, looking around the room. "We've given people a lifeline, and now it's time to fight for that." Darnell was quick to speak up. "We've been building something that people need, and we're not backing down. We've got the support of the communities, and we've got the law on our side. Let's fight back." Elon's legal team immediately began preparing a defense. They combed through the lawsuit, meticulously reviewing regulations and ensuring they had all their legal bases covered. But more than that, Elon knew they needed to tell the story of Access Plus to the world, to show people that this wasn't just about technology, but about helping those who had been left behind by the financial system. Elon knew that the battle ahead would require more than just lawyers. It would require a movement. So, he took to social media, speaking directly to his followers and the public about the importance of Access Plus and its mission to empower marginalized communities. "This is bigger than just a tech company," Elon wrote in a tweet that quickly went viral. "Access Plus is about giving people the chance to rebuild their lives when the system has failed them. Our mission is clear: to create a more inclusive future, one that doesn't leave anyone behind." Support poured in from all corners of the internet. People from around the world expressed their support for Access Plus, sharing stories of their own struggles with traditional financial systems. Many pointed out the advantages of the platform, including its accessibility and the fact that it didn't require any barriers to entry like bank accounts or credit scores. "Access Plus helped me get back on my feet when I had nothing," one user tweeted. "No more hidden fees, no more payday loans. Just a way to take control of my money." Another supporter shared, "I have a job now, thanks to Access Plus. I never thought I'd have a way to save or build credit again. This is the future." As the support for Access Plus grew, it became clear to Elon and his team that they had something much bigger on their hands than just a lawsuit. They had a movement. A few months later, after a tense and high-profile legal battle, Access Plus won its case. The court ruled in favor of the company, affirming that Access Plus did not violate any financial regulations, and that its model of providing financial services to underserved communities was both legal and beneficial to society. The ruling was a significant victory, not just for Access Plus, but for fintech companies that sought to disrupt traditional banking systems and create more inclusive financial services. "This is more than just a win in court," Elon said in a press conference after the decision. "This is a win for everyone who has ever felt ignored by the financial system. It's proof that we can build a more equitable future together." The victory brought more than just legal relief. It brought validation. Investors, once hesitant, now began to show interest in Access Plus, eager to help fund its expansion. Partnerships with major retailers and payment processors also began to materialize, further solidifying Access Plus's place in the financial ecosystem. With the legal battle behind them and the wind in their sails, Elon and his team set their sights on the next phase of their expansion. They'd proved that Access Plus could work, that it could help people, and that it was here to stay. But Elon knew this was just the beginning. There were still millions of people who needed a solution like Access Plus, and there was so much more to do. As he looked out over the city skyline one evening, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The tide had risen, and now it was time to ride the wave toward a future where everyone had access to the financial tools they needed to thrive. With the legal battles behind them and a solid base of support in the United States, Elon knew it was time to think bigger. Expanding Access Plus beyond the borders of the U.S. would present a whole new set of challenges, but the potential was vast. After all, the system wasn't just solving a local issue. It was addressing a global need. Millions of people worldwide still lacked access to basic financial services, and if Access Plus could make it work in the U.S., it could work in other countries too. Elon sat in his office, staring at a map of the world on his wall. The possibilities were endless. "We've built something incredible here," Elon said to his team one morning. "But if we really want to make a difference, we need to go global. We need to bring Access Plus to places where people are completely excluded from the financial system." He paused for a moment, knowing that scaling internationally would require careful consideration. "We'll start with emerging markets. Countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, where mobile penetration is high but access to traditional banking is still limited. That's where the opportunity is." The team began researching the most promising international markets for Access Plus. Elon's vision was to bring financial inclusion to regions where technology could bypass the barriers of traditional banking. They targeted areas where mobile phones were widely used, but where access to physical banking infrastructure was scarce. Their first two countries were Nigeria and India. Both had large populations, with millions of people living without access to bank accounts. The challenge was clear. Could they build a system that could work with limited resources while ensuring the same level of security and reliability they had achieved in the U.S.? "We need to adapt the system to local needs," said Raj, one of the engineers who had been working on Access Plus since the beginning. "In these countries, mobile money is already popular. The key will be integrating Access Plus with existing mobile money platforms to make the transition as seamless as possible." Elon agreed. The technology wasn't the problem. It was about adapting to the local context and ensuring that Access Plus could work within the financial and regulatory systems of each country. This meant collaborating with local banks, mobile operators, and governments to ensure compliance and integration. The first test market was Nigeria, where mobile money services were already thriving. In collaboration with a major telecom provider, Access Plus launched a pilot program in Lagos. The program was designed to offer an easy way for users to open an account, save money, and make transactions entirely from their smartphones. The system was built to be lightweight and efficient, capable of operating even on lower-end phones with limited internet connectivity. When the system went live, the response was overwhelming. Within a matter of days, thousands of people signed up. Many of them had never had access to a formal bank account before. Instead, they relied on cash transactions or mobile wallets from local telecom providers that lacked the full capabilities of a banking system. Access Plus changed that by providing a user-friendly platform where they could save, transfer money, and even apply for microloans. One of the first users, Ade, a young entrepreneur, shared his experience in a video that quickly went viral on social media. "I've been running my small business for years, but I never had a way to safely store my earnings. Now, with Access Plus, I don't have to worry about losing my money. It's in my phone, and it's protected," Ade said, his smile broadening as he demonstrated the platform on his smartphone. The success in Nigeria was a huge boost, not only for Access Plus but for the entire team. It was proof that their technology could make a real difference in emerging markets, where the need for inclusive financial solutions was even more urgent. Encouraged by the success in Nigeria, Access Plus set its sights on India, the second-largest country by population. India presented its own unique challenges, regulatory hurdles, linguistic diversity, and a fragmented market. However, it also offered a massive opportunity. In partnership with a well-known Indian mobile carrier, Access Plus launched a pilot in Mumbai. The team made significant adaptations to the app, translating it into several local languages, integrating with India's existing financial infrastructure, and complying with the country's banking regulations. The feedback was even more enthusiastic than in Nigeria. Small business owners, migrant workers, and rural farmers who had previously struggled to access banking services now had a way to manage their finances. With the addition of basic credit score features, many users could now get small loans to expand their businesses or invest in their futures. One woman, Priya, had been using Access Plus for a few months when she told her story at a community event. "I never thought I would be able to save money. I had no bank account, and I didn't trust traditional financial services. But Access Plus has given me the power to control my money. I can send money to my family in the village, save for emergencies, and even get a loan to grow my business. It's changed my life," Priya said, wiping away tears as the crowd applauded. The success in India solidified Elon's belief that Access Plus could be a force for global change. The platform was now operating successfully in two of the world's most populous countries, helping millions of people who had been excluded from the financial system for far too long. As the expansion continued, Elon's team learned valuable lessons. Each country presented unique challenges, different regulatory environments, cultural considerations, and local financial practices. But the core principles of Access Plus remained the same: providing people with access to secure financial tools, enabling them to manage their money, and giving them the ability to participate in the global economy. One of the biggest challenges was ensuring that the system remained scalable while also being tailored to local needs. In countries like Nigeria and India, where mobile phones were more common than computers, they had to create a platform that worked seamlessly across devices and was light enough to run on even the most basic smartphones. They also had to make sure that transaction costs remained low, as many users relied on small amounts of money and couldn't afford high fees. "The technology is only as good as its ability to adapt," Elon said during a team meeting. "We need to stay nimble and listen to our users. What works in one country might not work in another, so we must be open to change." Looking ahead, Elon had a bold vision for Access Plus. His goal was to reach every corner of the globe, helping people in developed and developing countries alike who had been excluded from the traditional banking system. Access Plus wasn't just a fintech product. It was a tool for economic empowerment. As the team worked on expanding the platform into more countries, they continued to refine their model, improve the user experience, and ensure that the service was accessible to all, no matter where they lived or how much they earned. "We're not just building a tech company," Elon reflected in a meeting one evening. "We're building a global movement. Financial freedom isn't a privilege, it's a right. And we're going to make sure that everyone, everywhere, has the tools they need to succeed." With this mission in mind, Access Plus was set to change the face of global finance, one user at a time. The future was bright, and the journey was just beginning. As Access Plus expanded its footprint into multiple countries, the platform's success grew exponentially, but with it came new, unforeseen challenges. The rapid growth created a wealth of opportunities, but it also raised concerns about how well the system could maintain its commitment to user security, privacy, and reliability. Despite Elon's meticulous planning and the team's hard work, the pressures of expansion brought a massive test, one that no one had anticipated. A series of high-profile security breaches began to hit the headlines. It wasn't Access Plus that was directly responsible for the breaches, but rather a third-party vendor that provided data encryption services. Hackers managed to exploit a vulnerability in the vendor's software, gaining access to sensitive user information from several countries where Access Plus had recently launched. The news spread quickly, and soon, a massive trust crisis began to unfold. The breach did not result in financial loss for users, as Access Plus had implemented multi-layered security protocols, but the breach exposed personal data, including names, phone numbers, and, in some cases, partial identification numbers. It was a nightmare scenario for a company that had worked so hard to establish trust with its user base. The fallout was immediate. Angry users flooded social media with complaints. The hashtag Access Breach trended worldwide as people vented their frustration and fear. Some customers even took to deleting their accounts, citing a loss of trust in the system. Others demanded refunds or compensation for the inconvenience, even though no funds had been lost. Elon's phone didn't stop ringing. Media outlets were knocking at his door for interviews, and competitors were eager to capitalize on the situation. The company's PR team scrambled to manage the fallout, but the damage was already done. In a press conference, Elon addressed the breach head-on, acknowledging the failure and apologizing to the millions of users affected. "We take full responsibility for this breach," he said, his face stern but resolute. "While we work tirelessly to build a secure platform, this breach was a reminder that no system is invulnerable. We are committed to learning from this and strengthening our security measures to ensure that something like this never happens again." Elon knew that this incident could break Access Plus if not handled carefully. He had to do more than just apologize. He had to show the world that Access Plus was worthy of trust again. Over the next few weeks, the Access Plus team worked around the clock to fix the vulnerabilities in the third-party system, cutting ties with the affected vendor and implementing a new, state-of-the-art encryption solution. They also offered users free security audits, allowing them to check their accounts for any irregularities. A dedicated team was created to address user concerns and offer compensation where necessary. More importantly, Elon decided to take a different approach, one that would involve transparency, accountability, and, most crucially, user involvement. Access Plus invited a group of security experts, privacy advocates, and even everyday users to a series of town hall meetings and webinars where Elon and his team would answer questions, discuss the breach, and outline the steps being taken to prevent future security failures. At the same time, the company launched a global awareness campaign to educate users about online safety and best practices. Elon and the team began making long-term plans, not just for expanding Access Plus into new countries, but for refining the product to be more user-friendly, accessible, and secure than ever before. The focus shifted from just solving the problem of financial exclusion to tackling the larger issue of digital inclusion. Access Plus now had the potential to become a global leader not just in fintech, but in ethical tech, a company that prioritized the well-being of its users above all else. "I've learned that it's not the mistakes that define us," Elon said during a company-wide meeting. "It's how we respond to them. We've learned, we've grown, and we're stronger because of it. Now, let's build the future we've always dreamed of, one that's safe, inclusive, and secure for everyone." With renewed determination and a solid plan in place, Access Plus set its sights on the future. Knowing that with the right values, they could weather any storm and continue changing the world for the better. As Access Plus continued to expand and rebuild its reputation, Elon Musk felt a deeper sense of responsibility weighing on him. The platform had become a global force, and while he was determined to stay true to his vision of providing financial inclusion, he knew that they weren't operating in a vacuum. The bigger Access Plus grew, the more it attracted not only public attention but also the interest of powerful, unseen forces. Corporate giants, governments, and even shadowy organizations began to take notice of the disruption Access Plus was causing in the financial sector. One night, while scrolling through reports and emails, Elon stumbled across a headline that caught his eye. Tech giants push back against new digital finance startup. The article referenced several unnamed sources within the banking industry, hinting that traditional financial institutions were now viewing Access Plus as a serious threat. This wasn't surprising, given Access Plus's success, but it was the next sentence that piqued Elon's curiosity. Concerns over market monopoly and regulatory implications loom large. Elon immediately knew that Access Plus had reached a tipping point. It was no longer just a tech company pushing an innovative product. It was a revolutionary force in the world of finance. And with that kind of power, there were bound to be enemies. At first, the threats were subtle. Major banks and financial institutions started to scrutinize Access Plus from a regulatory standpoint, putting pressure on governments to impose stricter regulations on digital currencies and mobile finance platforms. Behind the scenes, lobbying groups, backed by some of the largest financial players in the world, began circulating memos warning about the dangers of a digital-only financial world. Elon wasn't naive. He knew this kind of resistance was inevitable, but the level of coordinated effort was surprising. He started to see a pattern of organizations using their influence to disrupt the growth of digital financial systems like Access Plus. It wasn't just about competition, it was about control. The established financial world wasn't about to let go of its power so easily. "Look at this," Elon said to Raj, his trusted advisor, as they reviewed the report together. "It's not just about us growing too fast. They're scared of what this means for their control. We're on the verge of disrupting the entire global financial system." Raj nodded grimly. "And they have resources. If we're not careful, we could face legal challenges, new regulations, or even a coordinated campaign to discredit Access." One evening, just days after this realization, Elon received an unexpected invitation. The email, sent from an anonymous address, was brief and to the point. "We know what you're trying to do with Access Plus. You have the potential to change the world, but we need to talk." Curious and cautious, Elon arranged the meeting in a discreet location. It was a private room in a luxurious building overlooking the city skyline, an environment that screamed power and secrecy. When Elon arrived, he was met by a man dressed in a sharp suit, his identity hidden behind dark sunglasses. There were no introductions, no formalities, just a conversation. "We've been following your progress with Access Plus," the man said, his voice cold and deliberate. "And we can see that you're on the brink of something monumental. But there are forces in the world that want to stop you. We can help you. All we need is a small favor in return." Elon raised an eyebrow, sensing the weight of the situation. "What kind of favor?" The man smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something you didn't want to hear. "You're playing in a global arena now. There are powerful people with a vested interest in ensuring that Access Plus doesn't succeed. We can help you navigate that world for a price." Elon's mind raced. He was no stranger to making difficult decisions, but this felt different. He had built Access Plus with the goal of making a difference, not just for profit or personal gain. But the conversation had opened a door to a much darker side of the industry, one that played by its own rules. "I don't do deals with people who can't be trusted," Elon said firmly. "If you're offering help, then offer it freely. But I don't play games." The man leaned back, his expression unreadable. "Very well, Mr. Musk. But remember, sometimes, in order to change the world, you need to understand how the world works. You don't have to take our help, but you might regret it." With that, he stood up, leaving Elon with nothing but the unsettling feeling that he had just been offered a glimpse into a shadowy underworld he had no desire to enter. In the following days, Elon couldn't shake the encounter from his mind. The pressure from the financial establishment was growing stronger, and as Access Plus became more successful, the more power it attracted. It was clear that the stakes had risen to a level he had never anticipated. Raj, sensing Elon's unease, approached him one afternoon. "Elon, we can't ignore the reality. There are forces out there that want to see us fail. We have two options: fight back with everything we have, or consider making a deal with some of these influential players to ensure our survival." Elon stood by the window of his office, staring out at the city below. He had always fought against the odds. He had always been the outsider, the one who didn't play by the established rules. But now, as Access Plus grew in prominence, the weight of those decisions grew heavier. "There has to be another way," Elon said quietly, more to himself than to Raj. "I didn't build Access Plus to fall into the same traps that the old system set up. We're not just another tech company. We're changing lives. I won't compromise that." As the days passed, Elon knew that Access Plus was entering its most crucial phase. The competition was no longer limited to market share. It was a battle for the future of digital finance. With each passing day, more and more powerful forces were aligning against him, some with legal power, others with more dangerous, clandestine resources. Yet, through it all, Elon remained resolute. He had a vision of a world where people had access to the financial tools they needed, no matter where they lived, no matter their income level. It was that vision that would continue to drive him forward, even as the unseen forces began to close in. In the quiet moments of the night, when the weight of the world seemed unbearable, Elon reminded himself of the core truth that had always motivated him. If you're not facing resistance, you're probably not making a difference. And with that, he steeled himself for the battles yet to come, because the future of Access Plus was not just about technology, it was about changing the world. And that, he knew, was a fight worth every sacrifice. As Access Plus faced mounting pressure from both external forces and internal challenges, Elon Musk found himself in an increasingly precarious position. The company's growth had surpassed even his own expectations, but so had the opposition. Corporate giants, global governments, and even clandestine players were now turning their attention to Access Plus, and they weren't just watching from the sidelines. They were actively trying to shape the outcome of the digital finance revolution, one way or another. In the midst of this turmoil, Access Plus continued to grow, but the stakes had never been higher. The looming question was not whether the company would survive. It was whether it could thrive under the heavy scrutiny of a world that was beginning to realize the true power of digital finance. The media, which had once hailed Access Plus as the next big thing, began to turn on the company. News outlets ran stories about the challenges the platform was facing, and experts speculated about its future. The narrative had shifted from disruptor to vulnerable. Journalists interviewed former employees, some of whom had left the company citing internal struggles and ideological disagreements. At first, the criticisms were minor, but as more leaks surfaced, the media frenzy escalated. Headlines like, "Can Access Plus survive the digital revolution?" and "Is Elon Musk's vision for finance a gamble?" began to dominate news feeds. Despite the negative press, Elon remained calm. The company had been through worse before, and he wasn't about to let a few setbacks derail his vision. But the pressure of public perception was something new. While his innovations were often met with skepticism, this time the stakes were far higher. People weren't just questioning his products. They were questioning the very integrity of his mission. To make matters worse, a report from a leading financial think tank accused Access Plus of potentially violating antitrust laws, claiming that the platform's rapid expansion could lead to monopolistic control over the global financial sector. The report argued that Access Plus was growing too quickly, acquiring too much market share, and bypassing traditional financial systems in ways that could destabilize the economy. Elon's response was swift, but he knew it wasn't enough to silence the critics. Access Plus isn't a monopoly, he stated firmly during a live broadcast. It's a tool for financial freedom. We're giving people access to what they've been denied for generations. We're not here to control the market. We're here to change it. But the damage was done. Investors were beginning to pull back, and Access Plus' stock began to dip. The company's financial security, which had once seemed unshakable, was now uncertain. As if on cue, the first serious wave of legal challenges began to hit. The first lawsuit came from a powerful coalition of major banks, claiming that Access Plus was operating outside the bounds of financial regulations. The lawsuit was just the beginning. Soon after, other legal entities from around the world filed similar complaints, accusing the company of circumventing laws designed to protect traditional financial institutions. It wasn't just about the law. Powerful lobbying groups were pressuring governments to regulate digital finance more strictly. As Access Plus expanded its operations, governments in Europe, Asia, and the United States began drafting new legislation aimed at curbing the influence of fintech companies. Elon knew that these lawsuits and regulatory efforts were not merely about enforcing the law, they were about stifling competition. Access Plus had become too much of a threat, and now it was being painted as a dangerous entity that needed to be reined in. In the face of these attacks, Elon realized that Access Plus would need to fight on multiple fronts: legal, political, and financial. It was a war on many fronts, and every day brought a new challenge. Despite the growing opposition, Elon wasn't one to back down from a challenge. He knew that his best chance for survival and success was to fight smart, not just hard. It was time for a new strategy, one that would require Access Plus to navigate the complex world of regulation while maintaining its core values of openness, inclusivity, and transparency. Elon reached out to regulators directly. He invited officials from various countries to meet with him and discuss how digital finance could be integrated into the global economy without sacrificing security or fairness. These meetings were not easy. The regulatory bodies were cautious, and the resistance from traditional financial sectors was palpable. But Elon saw an opportunity to make his case, not just for Access Plus, but for the future of financial inclusion. "We're not here to destroy the system," Elon said at one of the meetings. "We're here to make it better. Access Plus is about giving the people more control over their money and their future. You can regulate us, but you can't stop progress." Slowly, Access Plus began to make progress with regulators. They didn't win every battle, but they made headway, establishing a framework for digital finance that incorporated strict privacy protections, anti-fraud measures, and clear guidelines for competition. But not all the challenges came from the government or the legal system. Behind the scenes, corporate giants were quietly working to undermine Access Plus. These companies saw Access Plus as a threat to their own market dominance, and they weren't going to let it grow without a fight. Elon began to receive anonymous messages, warning him of efforts to sabotage Access Plus from within. These messages hinted at corporate espionage, and soon, rumors circulated that some of Access Plus' own employees were being recruited by rival companies to leak information or undermine the platform's efforts. It became clear that Access Plus wasn't just facing external legal and regulatory challenges, it was also being attacked from within. Elon had built a culture of transparency and trust, but as the pressure mounted, it was starting to crack. His employees were divided, some loyal to his vision, others swayed by the lucrative offers from competitors. To counter this, Elon decided to take a bold step. He called a company-wide meeting. "This is a defining moment for Access Plus," he told the team. "We are not just a company, we are a movement. If you're with us, you're with us. If you're not, you're free to leave. But we will never compromise our mission." The meeting was a turning point for many employees. It was a reminder of the values that had brought them all together in the first place. Slowly but surely, Elon began to rebuild trust within the company, reinforcing his commitment to the mission and the people who believed in it. As Access Plus continued to navigate these turbulent waters, Elon found himself more determined than ever to succeed. The challenges were immense, but so were the stakes. He knew that Access Plus was on the brink of changing the world, but that kind of change didn't come without a fight. In one final, defiant gesture, Elon invited the world to witness Access Plus' next big move, a partnership with a major international charity to bring financial services to the world's most underserved populations. It was a bold, risky move, but if it worked, it would prove that Access Plus wasn't just a tool for the wealthy, it was a force for good in the world. As the announcement went live, the world was watching. Elon Musk had done it again. He had turned a crisis into an opportunity, and the future of Access Plus looked brighter than ever. But there were still many battles to come. And this time, the stakes were even higher. As Access Plus navigated through a tumultuous phase marked by media scrutiny, legal battles, and corporate sabotage, Elon Musk knew the company had crossed a threshold that no other fintech platform had dared approach. The battle for the future of finance wasn't just about technology. It was about trust. It was about whether the world would believe in what Access Plus stood for, financial freedom for all, no matter their background, and whether that belief would withstand the powerful forces arrayed against them. The partnership with a major international charity had been a pivotal moment. It wasn't just a press release. It was a statement that Access Plus was more than just a tech company. It was a global movement. The charity's mission was to provide financial services to communities in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, regions that had long been excluded from traditional banking systems. If successful, this partnership would prove that Access Plus wasn't about displacing the old guard. It was about filling in the gaps that had been ignored for too long. The announcement made waves around the world. The charity, known for its grassroots initiatives in empowering underserved populations, had long been seen as a trusted entity. Its endorsement lent credibility to Access Plus, and the collaboration became a model for how fintech could address the world's most pressing financial challenges. But the challenges were far from over. While Access Plus' reach expanded to the far corners of the world, back home in the U.S., the media's portrayal of the company remained polarized. One day, Access Plus was praised for its social good. The next, it was accused of exacerbating global inequality with its unregulated growth. And still, the old guard in the financial sector was relentless in its attempts to derail Elon's vision. Elon and Raj discussed their next moves in a series of high-stakes meetings. "The world is watching us," Raj said one evening, his face tired but resolute. "We need to be more than just a tech company now. We need to embody what we preach." Elon nodded. The partnership with the charity had given Access Plus the goodwill it needed, but it had also opened the floodgates to new criticisms. The focus had shifted from how Access Plus could be regulated to whether it could be trusted at all. It wasn't long before the trust issue became Access Plus's most pressing challenge. Customers began to question the integrity of the platform. While many embraced the mission, others feared that Access Plus was simply too big, too fast, and too unpredictable. Scandals emerged, some real, some fabricated, that challenged the company's transparency. Leaks from disgruntled employees hinted at internal turmoil, while conspiracy theories about Access Plus's data collection practices began circulating online. Elon knew that the key to overcoming these challenges was to build a deeper, more resilient trust with the people who relied on Access Plus every day. It wasn't enough to simply offer a product that worked. People needed to believe in the company, in its mission, and in Elon himself. "We have to go straight to the people," Elon said during a late-night brainstorming session. "We've done well with the tech, but now it's time for a shift. We need to show the world who we are, why we're doing this, and why we'll never stop." To restore faith in Access Plus, Elon launched what he called the Trust Campaign. It wasn't a traditional marketing campaign. It was an open invitation to the world to get involved in the future of finance. Elon and the Access Plus leadership team began touring the world, holding open forums in cities, towns, and remote villages to speak directly to people. They answered questions, discussed the company's values, and showed how Access Plus was making a tangible difference in people's lives. Elon even took to social media with unprecedented transparency, sharing behind-the-scenes footage of Access Plus's operations, addressing controversies head-on, and providing regular updates on the company's plans and progress. For the first time, Access Plus wasn't just a brand. It was a movement with a real, human face behind it. The Trust Campaign was a gamble. It was risky to open up to such scrutiny, especially when Access Plus was already under attack. But Elon knew that this was the only way forward. If people couldn't trust Access Plus, it wouldn't matter how many customers the company had or how advanced the technology was. Trust was the foundation, and slowly but surely, it began to work. The world's perception of Access Plus began to shift. Customers who had once been wary of the platform started to feel a sense of ownership in it, as though they were a part of something bigger than just a fintech company. As Access Plus worked to restore trust externally, Elon knew that rebuilding the internal culture was just as critical. He had always prided himself on fostering an environment of innovation and transparency, But the recent challenges had created fractures within the company. The pressure to succeed and the constant media firestorm had led to burnout and division among his team. Elon knew he had to address this. He took it upon himself to meet with employees personally, holding town halls and one-on-one meetings with members from every department. He wanted them to understand the company's mission, but more importantly, he wanted them to understand why they were important in realizing that mission. "We've come a long way, but we're far from finished," Elon told the team at one such meeting. "You're not just building a product. You're changing the world. And for that, we need every single one of you." This message resonated with many employees, reigniting their passion for the mission. Elon's direct involvement in the company's day-to-day operations served as a reminder that the vision was bigger than any individual, and Access Plus was not just a business, it was a cause. But just as things began to settle, a moment of crisis struck. A major hacking incident targeted Access Plus, compromising sensitive user data across several countries. The breach wasn't catastrophic, but the damage to Access Plus's reputation was immediate. Headlines once again painted Access Plus as unreliable and dangerous, and the trust campaign was suddenly thrown into jeopardy. Elon's team worked around the clock to mitigate the damage, and the company publicly admitted to the breach, detailing the steps they were taking to rectify it. But the damage was done. Customers were once again questioning whether Access Plus was truly trustworthy. Investors were nervous, and the company's stock took another hit. This was the tipping point for Elon. It wasn't just about the tech anymore. It was about proving that Access Plus could weather any storm. This was the moment where Access Plus had to demonstrate resilience, integrity, and the ability to recover from adversity. "We've faced bigger challenges," Elon said during a company-wide address. "We'll fix this, and we'll come back stronger. We owe it to the people who rely on us." In the weeks that followed, Access Plus doubled down on security, implementing even stricter protocols and working with global cybersecurity experts to ensure that user data would never again be compromised. The company issued an apology to affected customers and made reparations where necessary, restoring their faith one step at a time. Slowly, but surely, the tide began to turn again. The media's narrative shifted from "Access Plus is unreliable" to "Access Plus is recovering." The trust that had been broken was being rebuilt, piece by piece. And in the end, it was clear. Access Plus had passed its most crucial test. The road to recovery was long, but Access Plus had survived, and in the process, had earned something far more valuable than money or fame: trust. The company's mission, which had once seemed like an impossible dream, was now closer than ever to becoming a reality. And Elon Musk, as always, was ready for whatever came next. With the trust crisis behind them, Access Plus was slowly but surely clawing its way back to stability. But Elon Musk knew that the real battle had only just begun. The world had been watching the company's every move, and the next phase of its journey would be just as crucial, if not more so, than anything that had come before. It was no longer just about surviving. It was about thriving and setting the stage for the future of digital finance. The world had changed, and so had Access Plus. What began as a way to challenge the status quo of traditional banking was now evolving into a global movement that could reshape economies and financial systems in ways no one had anticipated. The road ahead was filled with obstacles, but for Elon, it was also filled with opportunities. Opportunities to prove that Access Plus was not just a company, but a force for good in the world. Elon's attention had always been on the cutting edge. After the cybersecurity breach, he realized that Access Plus had to stay one step ahead in terms of technology. The platform had already revolutionized the way people interacted with their money, but to remain a leader in the space, they needed to push the boundaries even further. With this in mind, he rallied his team of engineers, developers, and financial experts to embark on a new, ambitious project: the creation of a fully integrated financial ecosystem, one that combined the best of blockchain technology, AI-driven finance, and personalized digital banking. Access Plus would not just be a platform for transactions. It would be a complete financial partner, offering everything from savings accounts to loans, investments, and even personal financial planning, powered entirely by AI. "The future of finance isn't just about making payments easier," Elon said in a meeting. It's about creating a system that understands the needs of every individual and tailors their financial experience accordingly. We can give people financial freedom, but we need to help them understand and control their own wealth. The team immediately got to work. The goal was to create an ecosystem that was seamless, intuitive, and entirely customer-focused. They would use AI to track users' spending habits, saving patterns, and financial goals to provide personalized advice and products. Everything from personalized budgeting tips to custom-tailored loan options. Access Plus would be a financial advisor, a bank, and a wealth manager all in one. But the technology alone wasn't enough. The company would need to remain transparent and accountable to its customers. Elon had learned the hard way that without trust, even the best innovations would fall flat. While Access Plus was focused on innovation, the competition was becoming more intense. Traditional financial institutions, once dismissive of the company, were now scrambling to catch up. They began to pour money into digital platforms of their own, trying to replicate Access Plus's success. However, their slow-moving, bureaucratic structures were at a disadvantage. They lacked the agility and vision that had made Access Plus so successful in the first place. At the same time, a new wave of fintech startups began to emerge, each offering unique solutions to the problems that had long plagued the traditional financial sector. Some focused on microlending, others on financial literacy, and others still on cryptocurrency-powered solutions. While many of these startups were small, they were nimble and posed a significant threat to Access Plus. Elon understood that in order to stay ahead, Access Plus needed to not only innovate but also anticipate the next wave of challenges and opportunities. He knew that the world was moving rapidly toward a decentralized, blockchain-driven financial system, and if Access Plus could position itself as the leader in this space, it would be unstoppable. But there was a complication. As Access Plus grew, so did its visibility. The company was no longer a small startup with a niche audience. It was a global player. And with global success came global scrutiny. Governments, central banks, and regulators were now turning their attention to Access Plus in a way they never had before. The company's rapid growth was being viewed with suspicion by some, while others saw it as a threat to traditional financial systems. Elon's vision for a decentralized financial ecosystem was at odds with many traditional governments and central banks. These entities had long been in control of monetary systems and saw the rise of fintech companies like Access Plus as a challenge to their power. In particular, Access Plus was faced with increasing pressure from governments around the world to comply with regulations that would limit the scope of its operations. Some countries were calling for stricter rules on digital currencies, while others demanded that Access Plus adhere to traditional banking regulations, which could hinder its ability to innovate. Elon knew that navigating these regulatory waters would be a delicate balancing act. On one hand, he was committed to his mission of financial empowerment. On the other, he had to ensure that Access Plus could continue to operate without compromising its values or growth. Access Plus hired a team of legal experts to tackle the mounting regulatory challenges. They worked around the clock to ensure that the platform was in compliance with various financial regulations, while also pushing for policy changes that would allow for greater freedom in the digital finance space. Elon himself became more involved in discussions with lawmakers, trying to make the case that Access Plus wasn't a threat to financial systems. It was a necessary innovation that would benefit the global economy. But not all governments were willing to listen. Some countries moved swiftly to impose heavy restrictions on Access Plus's operations, citing concerns about privacy, security, and the destabilizing potential of decentralized finance. Others saw the company's success as an opportunity to regulate fintech and claim a larger share of the growing market. Despite the mounting challenges, Elon remained resolute. He knew that Access Plus was at a turning point. Either it would succumb to external pressures, or it would rise above them and become the global leader in digital finance. He took a bold step. Elon announced that Access Plus would launch a major initiative, the creation of an entirely new, decentralized blockchain-based platform that would bypass traditional regulatory frameworks while still ensuring compliance with basic consumer protection laws. The platform would give users the ability to manage their finances without relying on banks, giving them complete control over their wealth. It's time to break free from the old system, Elon declared. Access Plus is going to lead the charge in creating a new financial future, one that isn't controlled by governments or banks, but by the people. The announcement sent shockwaves through the financial world. It was a risky move, but it was also a bold declaration that Access Plus wasn't backing down. It was pushing ahead, full force, into uncharted territory. As Access Plus launched its new decentralized platform, the company's mission evolved. It wasn't just about providing a service, it was about creating a movement. Elon envisioned a world where people no longer had to rely on traditional financial institutions to control their lives. Access Plus would empower individuals to take control of their own financial futures using the technology that had once seemed out of reach. The world was watching. Traditional banks and governments scrambled to catch up, but Access Plus was ahead of the curve, and the future of digital finance was now in its hands. For Elon Musk, the battle for the future of finance was far from over. But with each step, he was making it clear that Access Plus would be the one to define that future. The question remained, would the world embrace this new paradigm, or would the forces of the past fight to hold on to control? As the next chapter unfolded, it was clear that the stakes had never been higher. Access Plus was more than just a company. It was a force that would shape the very future of how money moved and how power was distributed across the globe. With the launch of its new decentralized platform, Access Plus had successfully reinvented itself once again. Elon Musk's vision for the future of finance was no longer a dream. It was a rapidly growing reality, and the financial world was now fully awake to the seismic shift that was occurring. But as with any revolutionary movement, the consequences of such a bold step were both exhilarating and terrifying. The decentralized platform was designed to offer financial autonomy to everyone, anywhere in the world. By leveraging blockchain technology, Access Plus could now provide peer-to-peer transactions, decentralized loans, and even a digital wallet that was independent of any government or financial institution. This new wave of financial freedom came at a time when the traditional systems were struggling with the constraints of outdated infrastructure. Elon Musk, always a step ahead, was determined to avoid the mistakes that had nearly sunk Access Plus in the past. This time, he would be proactive in ensuring that the company's expansion wouldn't be derailed by opposition from the old financial order. But there was one thing that was certain. The world was changing, and not everyone was happy about it. Governments and financial regulators around the world took a collective breath when Access Plus rolled out its decentralized platform. They had been watching Elon Musk's every move, waiting for the moment when he would make his final push for global financial dominance. Now that it had arrived, the backlash was swift. In countries like the United States, the European Union, and China, financial institutions began to rally against what they saw as a direct challenge to their authority. Politicians in several countries called for immediate legislation to restrict the operations of companies like Access Plus that were offering financial services outside of government control. The first real blow came from the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, which issued a statement declaring that Access Plus' decentralized platform would require strict regulation, even though it had been designed to operate outside traditional banking systems. The SEC argued that the platform's lack of oversight could lead to fraud, money laundering, and economic instability. Elon Musk, ever the master of navigating complex challenges, wasn't about to let these threats deter him. Instead of shrinking in the face of opposition, he turned the tables by framing the conversation as a matter of financial empowerment for the people. We're not trying to compete with traditional banks. We're trying to give people control over their own money, Elon declared during a global broadcast. This is about giving power back to individuals. If governments and financial institutions want to control the future of finance, they have every right to do so. But they shouldn't stop the people from having their say. The movement quickly gained traction as users from around the world embraced the idea of a decentralized financial ecosystem. People from nations with unstable currencies or restrictive banking systems found an alternative in Access Plus. In countries where inflation and devaluation had ravaged savings, people could now store their wealth in a decentralized system, free from the whims of central banks. What began as a platform for peer-to-peer transactions evolved into something much greater, a global financial revolution. Access Plus wasn't just a digital wallet anymore. It became a symbol of resistance against an outdated system that favored the wealthy and powerful. For the first time in history, People from every corner of the globe had access to a financial system that was free from traditional barriers. Small businesses in emerging markets saw a dramatic shift in how they conducted transactions. With Access Plus, they could accept payments, secure loans, and grow their businesses without relying on cumbersome banks that had traditionally charged high fees and imposed restrictive lending criteria. Entrepreneurs could now receive instant funding from a pool of decentralized investors, allowing for faster innovation and growth. And the best part? There were no middlemen taking a cut. Every transaction, every loan, every investment was processed through the blockchain, with complete transparency. The people, not the banks, controlled the flow of money. While the global response to Access Plus was largely positive, Elon knew the stakes had never been higher. The platform's success wasn't just about making money. It was about shifting the balance of power in the financial world, and that was a fight no one could afford to lose. He took a calculated risk by pushing forward with his vision for decentralized finance, even as regulators and powerful entities began to draw battle lines. Elon had always been a disruptor, but this was different. This wasn't just another tech startup. It was the beginning of a global movement that would challenge the very systems that had governed the world's wealth for centuries. But it wasn't just the opposition from governments that Elon had to worry about. The media, too, was turning up the heat. The narrative was starting to shift from Access Plus as a financial revolution to Access Plus as a threat to global stability. Journalists speculated about the potential risks of a decentralized financial system. Could it be used to launder money? Would it destabilize national economies? How could people protect their wealth if it was no longer under the control of trusted institutions? Elon remained confident, knowing that the road ahead would be challenging, but that Access Plus was on the right side of history. Just as Elon was preparing to face off with regulatory bodies and the media, a new challenger entered the fray. A rival company, named Rain Finance, had emerged with a platform that offered similar services to Access Plus, but with a crucial twist. It was backed by several major banks and multinational corporations. Rain Finance promised to offer the same benefits of decentralization, but with an added layer of trust that came from its corporate backers. They made bold claims of financial security, claiming that they could provide the benefits of blockchain while still operating within the traditional regulatory framework. The message was clear. Traditional financial institutions were beginning to adapt, and they were determined to maintain control over the future of finance. Elon knew that Rain Finance represented a significant threat to Access Plus. But rather than panic, he saw it as a chance to double down on his mission. He knew that the true power of Access Plus lay not in its technology, but in its unwavering commitment to the people. In response, Elon announced a global accessibility drive to further expand Access Plus' reach and solidify its position as the leader in the decentralized financial revolution. The drive would include offering free financial education, providing resources for small businesses, and creating partnerships with social impact organizations. Access Plus wasn't just about providing a service. It was about creating a financial ecosystem where every individual had the opportunity to thrive. As the competition with Rain Finance intensified, so did the battle for the future of finance. Access Plus was now a global entity, and the pressure to succeed was immense. Elon Musk knew that to win, the company would have to outpace both its competitors and its critics. The world's financial systems were undergoing a seismic shift, and Access Plus was at the center of it all. But Elon was ready. He had spent years building the platform, navigating controversies, and developing the vision that would change the world. Now, with everything on the line, he had one final question for himself. Would Access Plus be able to outlast the opposition and lead the charge toward a new era of financial empowerment? The answer, he believed, was yes. As Access Plus continued to grow and evolve, the tension surrounding Elon Musk's bold financial revolution reached a fever pitch. The world was on edge, watching every move he made. Would Access Plus survive the regulatory onslaught and fierce competition from powerful corporations? Or would this attempt to decentralize global finance end in failure? The stakes were higher than ever, and Musk, ever the visionary, wasn't about to let up. The escalating tension was not only a battle between Access Plus and its rivals, but also a cultural shift. More people than ever before were beginning to realize that the old financial system wasn't designed to benefit everyone. The traditional banking model, which had held power for centuries, had created an inequitable system where the rich got richer and the poor remained stagnant. The world was waking up to the potential of decentralized finance to level the playing field and disrupt this outdated structure. The response from users and supporters of Access Plus had been overwhelmingly positive. People were signing up in droves, creating decentralized wallets, and using blockchain-based transactions for everything from everyday purchases to large investments. But it wasn't just individuals that were getting behind the movement. Entire communities began to rally around Access Plus, eager to embrace a future where money and finance were not controlled by the banks. Elon had succeeded in creating more than just a product. He had ignited a global movement. As Access Plus expanded, people from diverse backgrounds and countries began to see the potential for financial freedom. In countries with rampant corruption, unreliable banking systems, and unstable currencies, Access Plus became a beacon of hope. Users felt empowered knowing that their financial futures were no longer tied to the whims of governments and traditional institutions. Elon understood that to maintain momentum, Access Plus had to offer more than just financial services. It had to provide the tools to help people build wealth, secure their futures, and support one another. As a result, he launched a series of educational programs aimed at empowering users to understand and make the most of decentralized finance. Through webinars, online courses, and real-time financial advice powered by AI, Access Plus started to create a knowledgeable user base that was eager to adopt the platform and spread the word. The company even partnered with nonprofits to ensure that low-income individuals and communities had access to these educational resources and could participate in the digital finance revolution. However, just as things were starting to take off, Access Plus faced a critical turning point. Rain Finance, the rising competitor backed by major banks and corporations, had launched a massive advertising campaign. With billions of dollars backing it, Rain promoted itself as the safer, more secure option for digital finance. It promised users the best of both worlds, decentralization paired with the stability and trust of big-name backers. Elon knew that Rain's approach would resonate with people who were hesitant to fully embrace decentralization. Many people were still nervous about stepping away from the security of established banks, even if those institutions had proven to be flawed. Elon had always believed in innovation as the driving force behind progress, but now, it was clear that the battle would be fought on two fronts, ideological and technological. Rain's influence and resources were undeniable. It wasn't just about technology, it was about trust. Elon knew that Access Plus had to prove it was a trustworthy option and could stand up to the more traditional players in the finance world. But trust, as he had learned from the security breach, was a fragile thing. Elon responded by doubling down on his message. Decentralization was not just a choice, it was a necessity. Access Plus wasn't just about providing a new way to handle money. It was about a deeper mission to dismantle a corrupt financial system that was holding people back. He rallied his supporters, calling for a new era of transparency, empowerment, and opportunity. The Access Plus community, which had grown into an influential and passionate movement, began to play a larger role than ever before. Users who had benefited from the platform started to take to social media and share their personal stories. They explained how Access Plus had transformed their financial lives and why they believed it was the future. "I never thought I could manage my money the way I do now," one user said in a viral video. "Access Plus didn't just help me save money. It helped me understand my own financial power. For the first time, I'm in control of my future." In a matter of weeks, the hashtag power to the people was trending worldwide, and Access Plus was gaining new users every minute. This grassroots movement became a crucial counterweight to the marketing power of Rain Finance. Elon had created more than just a digital currency platform. He had sparked a revolution of financial freedom. The battle between Access Plus and Rain Finance came to a head at the next Global Finance Summit. The eyes of the world were on the two companies, and Elon knew that this was the moment that would determine Access Plus's future. At the summit, Elon Musk would face off against the CEO of Rain Finance in a live debate. The stakes were high. Rain CEO, Richard Hammond, was a seasoned corporate executive with years of experience navigating financial markets. He had the support of some of the world's most powerful companies, and he wasn't shy about using that influence to sway the public opinion in his favor. Hammond's arguments were rooted in traditional logic. Rain offered stability, compliance with regulations, and the backing of trusted institutions. While Access Plus may have been innovative, Hammond argued it was risky. Decentralized finance, according to him, was untested and unstable. Elon, however, was unshaken. He countered by explaining the core philosophy behind Access Plus, that decentralization was the future and that the status quo could no longer control the wealth of the people. He spoke passionately about the need for a financial system that prioritized the needs of individuals over institutions. The future of finance isn't about consolidating power, Elon said. It's about spreading it. It's about trust in people, not corporations. The people are the future of finance, not banks. It's time for the people to take control. The debate was heated, but the momentum was with Elon. His words resonated with a global audience that was tired of being at the mercy of the old system. By the time the debate was over, it was clear that Access Plus had secured its place at the table. The message was clear. The decentralized finance revolution was real, and it was here to stay. The aftermath of the summit was far-reaching. Rain Finance, while still a formidable competitor, had lost some of its sheen. Public trust in traditional financial systems was eroding, and more people were choosing to side with Access Plus and its mission. Elon had proven that decentralization wasn't just a viable option, it was the future. But even as Access Plus celebrated its victory, Elon knew that the real battle was far from over. The financial system was changing, but the road ahead was still uncertain. Access Plus was just getting started, and the fight for the future of finance was only beginning. As Elon Musk looked to the future, he realized that the next step was crucial. Access Plus had to continue to innovate, push boundaries, and, most importantly, stay true to its mission. The world was watching, and Elon Musk was determined to make sure Access Plus would lead the charge into the next era of finance, one that would forever change how money moved across the globe. The victory at the Global Finance Summit marked a pivotal moment for Access Plus, but the road ahead was anything but smooth. As the decentralized finance movement continued to grow, the world became divided. While millions embraced the idea of financial freedom and independence, governments and powerful corporations took a hard stance against the platform's growing influence. Despite the increasing popularity of Access Plus, there were undeniable cracks in the foundation of the movement. The world's financial elites were not going to relinquish their grip on power without a fight. The battle for the future of finance had escalated from a battle between companies to a global ideological war that pitted the old financial order against a new, disruptive force. Elon Musk had always known that disruption was a double-edged sword. Now, it was time to face the consequences of the path he had chosen. The international response to Access Plus's growing power was mixed. In countries like India, Kenya, and Argentina, Access Plus was hailed as a game-changer. In places where inflation, corruption, and outdated financial systems had stifled economic growth, Access Plus represented a much-needed alternative. People were using the platform to send money to family members abroad, to build businesses, and to gain financial independence. For many, it felt like the dawn of a new era. But in the United States, the European Union, and China, the story was different. Financial regulators, fearing the loss of control over national economies, began implementing harsh measures against decentralized financial platforms. In the U.S., the SEC had already introduced regulations aimed at curbing the rise of platforms like Access Plus, citing concerns about money laundering and illegal activities. But even worse, a growing wave of hostility from financial institutions and politicians was threatening to cripple the platform's ability to operate. In Europe, the European Central Bank warned that decentralized currencies could destabilize the region's economies. They saw the rise of Access Plus as a direct challenge to the euro, and they weren't about to let that happen without a fight. China, meanwhile, had already begun working on its own digital currency, the digital yuan, which it saw as a way to maintain control over its economy and prevent platforms like Access Plus from encroaching on its financial system. The global divide was deepening, with countries and institutions either supporting or opposing Access Plus's vision. Elon Musk, as always, stood firm in his belief that decentralization was the future. But the question remained. Could Access Plus survive the mounting pressure, or would it be crushed by the weight of the old guard? As Access Plus faced increased resistance, Elon knew that the company's survival depended on a shift in strategy. It was no longer enough to just push forward with innovation. Access Plus had to outmaneuver its opponents at every turn. Elon's solution was a bold move. He would begin positioning Access Plus not just as a financial tool, but as a new way of life. The decentralized financial system was more than just a digital wallet. It was the foundation for a new, self-sustaining economy. Elon's vision expanded beyond just providing financial services to creating an entire ecosystem that could support a decentralized society. Access Plus would no longer be limited to payments and transactions. It would evolve into a global platform that connected everything: business, education, healthcare, and governance, under a decentralized framework. The first step in this new strategy was the launch of Access Plus Network, a platform designed to host decentralized applications, dApps, that could operate independently of government and corporate control. This would allow entrepreneurs, developers, and innovators to build their own decentralized services on top of Access Plus' blockchain infrastructure. We're not just building a financial system, Elon explained during a live broadcast. We're creating the foundation for a new world, one where power is decentralized and people can shape their own futures. The old world is based on control and restriction. The new world is based on freedom and opportunity. As Elon outlined this ambitious vision, the backlash against Access Plus grew stronger. Governments around the world were banding together to form coalitions aimed at shutting down decentralized financial systems. The World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and major central banks were now actively lobbying for regulations that would make platforms like Access Plus illegal. In the U.S., a new bill was introduced in Congress that would criminalize the use of decentralized financial platforms. The bill, called the Financial Security and Regulation Act, sought to give the government the power to freeze digital assets, limit access to decentralized platforms, and even ban certain cryptocurrencies altogether. Lawmakers argued that without proper regulation, decentralized finance could lead to financial chaos. Elon Musk and his legal team knew that they had to fight back. They launched a public campaign to rally support for decentralized finance, using the same grassroots approach that had helped propel Access Plus to its current level of success. Elon's message was simple. This is about freedom. This is about ensuring that everyone, not just the elite, has access to financial opportunities. Meanwhile, Rain Finance, Access Plus' primary competitor, was watching the situation unfold with a mixture of concern and opportunism. While Access Plus was fighting for its survival, Rain had positioned itself as a safer, more compliant option. Richard Hammond, the CEO of Rain Finance, made it clear that his company was ready to step in and fill the void left by Access Plus if it were to be shut down. Our platform offers the benefits of decentralization without the risks, Hammond stated in an interview with CNBC. We believe in innovation, but we also believe in operating within the boundaries of the law. We're committed to providing a secure, regulated platform that ensures financial stability for our users. Elon saw Rain's comments as nothing more than a veiled attempt to take advantage of Access Plus' vulnerabilities. Rain's embrace of regulation and compliance with traditional financial institutions was exactly what Elon was trying to disrupt. To him, it wasn't about offering a safe alternative, it was about maintaining the status quo. As the battle for the future of finance escalated, something remarkable happened. The movement behind Access Plus gained momentum in a way that no one could have predicted. People were no longer just signing up for the platform for financial reasons. They were joining because they believed in the cause. Mass protests began to erupt in cities around the world. In major financial capitals like New York, London, and Tokyo, crowds gathered to show their support for decentralized finance and to demand that governments allow people to make their own financial decisions. Signs reading "Power to the People" and "Decentralize Everything" filled the streets. Elon Musk, ever the visionary, took advantage of this surge in grassroots support. He began holding town hall meetings around the world, speaking directly to the people and listening to their concerns. What became clear was that the people were not just interested in having access to their money. They wanted to control their financial futures. For the first time in history, A true global movement for financial autonomy had begun to take shape. As Access Plus continued to face resistance from powerful institutions, it also garnered support from millions of everyday people who saw the platform as a way to take control of their financial destinies. Elon Musk had ignited a fire that could not easily be extinguished. But as the battle intensified, one thing became certain. The future of Access Plus was no longer just about financial services. It was about fighting for a new way of life. One where people had control, not just over their finances, but over their futures. The world was changing, and in the end, only time would tell whether Access Plus could succeed in its fight for financial freedom, or whether the old financial order would find a way to put the brakes on the revolution. The world was entering a new phase of the financial revolution, and Access Plus was at the heart of it. Elon Musk had always been the master of innovation, but the battle to reshape the global financial system was proving to be a far more complex and dangerous challenge than anyone had imagined. The pressure was mounting, and it seemed as though everything was on the line. With governments pushing forward aggressive regulations and traditional financial institutions rallying together to protect their power, the future of decentralized finance hung in the balance. Elon, ever the optimist, had faith that Access Plus could weather this storm. But even he could not ignore the mounting signs of a decisive moment approaching. The final countdown had begun. As Access Plus faced increasing regulatory pressure, its user base grew stronger. What started as a small, grassroots movement had turned into an unstoppable force. People around the world, especially in countries with unstable economies, were flocking to the platform, seeking an alternative to traditional banking systems. They wanted freedom from the control of central banks, from inflation, and from the corruption that had plagued financial institutions for centuries. Elon understood that this growing global community of decentralized finance advocates was not just about innovation. It was about a paradigm shift. The people were demanding change, and Access Plus was providing the tools to make that change a reality. In cities like Buenos Aires, Nairobi, and Mumbai, Access Plus had become more than just a financial tool. It had become a symbol of resistance. People were using it to send money across borders without the oppressive fees of traditional banks. They were creating new businesses using blockchain-based smart contracts. They were even organizing movements to call for more decentralized governance, where power was distributed to the people rather than concentrated in the hands of a few. For the first time in history, a truly global network of everyday citizens was standing up to the established financial powers that had long held control. And as the momentum grew, so did the resolve of Elon Musk and his team. Elon had always believed that the greatest threat to Access Plus wasn't the regulations or the competitors, it was the risk of complacency. He knew that in order to truly revolutionize the global financial system, Access Plus needed to continue pushing the boundaries of what was possible. It needed to be more than just a decentralized payment platform. It had to evolve into something that could challenge every facet of traditional finance. As governments continued to introduce new laws to restrict the growth of decentralized finance, Elon made a bold and unprecedented move. He announced the creation of the Access Plus Sovereign Network, a global decentralized blockchain that would operate entirely outside the control of any government or institution. The network would act as a parallel financial system, offering everything from digital banking services to secure, anonymous transactions, completely unregulated and independent from the traditional financial system. The time has come to create an economy that is truly free, Elon declared in a live stream. This is not just about finance. This is about creating a world where the people, not governments or banks, are in control. The Sovereign Network will be the foundation of that new world. The launch of the Sovereign Network sent shockwaves throughout the global financial system. It was a direct challenge to the very concept of centralized control. With this new system, Access Plus would no longer just be a digital wallet. It would be the backbone of a completely independent global economy, one that could operate without the interference of governments or corporations. The reaction was immediate. Governments scrambled to respond to the news, and financial institutions began pulling out all the stops to prevent the Sovereign Network from becoming a reality. But for Elon, this was exactly what he had expected. The disruption was never going to be easy. It was always going to be a fight against the status quo. As Access Plus prepared to roll out the Sovereign Network, the confrontation with the world's financial elites reached its boiling point. The U.S. government, along with other major powers, escalated their efforts to shut down Access Plus. In the United States, lawmakers fast-tracked the Financial Security and Regulation Act, which would impose severe penalties on anyone using or promoting decentralized financial platforms. At the same time, financial giants like Rain Finance ramped up their campaign to discredit Access Plus and its founder. Richard Hammond, the CEO of Rain, publicly accused Elon Musk of being reckless and irresponsible for trying to build an unregulated global financial system. He argued that the sovereign network was a direct threat to the global economy and that it would lead to financial instability and chaos. Elon Musk's vision for a decentralized financial world is a dangerous fantasy, Hammond said in a televised interview. It may sound idealistic, but it is completely unsustainable. The reality is that we need regulation to protect the global economy, and Access Plus is a threat to that stability. Elon, however, remained steadfast. He knew that the battle for the future of finance was more than just a business rivalry. It was a battle of ideologies. The traditional financial system, with its centralized control and inequality, was no longer serving the needs of the people. Decentralized finance, he believed, was the only way forward. As tensions escalated, Elon made one final, bold move. Access Plus would hold a global event, the largest financial summit the world had ever seen, where he would unveil the sovereign network and demonstrate how it could reshape the future of finance. It would be the ultimate test. If Access Plus could survive the political and corporate pushback, it would prove once and for all that decentralized finance was here to stay. The event was scheduled to take place in New York City, at the iconic Madison Square Garden. The excitement around the summit was palpable, with people around the world eagerly anticipating what Elon Musk would unveil. The event was streamed live across multiple platforms, and millions tuned in to watch the showdown unfold. Elon had always been known for his bold statements, but this was different. This was a moment that would determine whether Access Plus could continue to grow, or whether the old financial powers would succeed in stifling its potential. On the day of the event, the stakes had never been higher. As Elon took the stage in front of a packed crowd, the weight of the moment was clear. He wasn't just making a case for a financial platform. He was making a case for the future of humanity. Elon Musk is not just fighting for a company, one commentator said, as the livestream played. He's fighting for a movement. This is about the freedom of individuals. It's about creating a new world where people can take control of their financial destinies. The room went silent as Elon began his presentation, and for a brief moment, the world held its breath. Would the sovereign network prove to be the catalyst for the decentralized revolution, or would it fall short in the face of fierce opposition? The final countdown had begun. The world was about to find out. As Elon Musk stood on the stage, the weight of the world seemed to rest on his shoulders. Madison Square Garden was filled with energy. An air of anticipation hung thick as millions watched live around the world. The eyes of the world were on Access Plus, on Elon, on the future of finance itself. The launch of the sovereign network was no longer just a business initiative. It was a decisive moment in the global struggle for control over money and power. Could the decentralized future Elon envisioned withstand the immense pressure from governments, financial elites, and regulatory bodies? The world's financial landscape was teetering on the edge, and this event could either push it into chaos or chart the course for an entirely new economic era. Elon began his presentation with a simple statement. What you see today is not just a financial system. It's a new world, built by and for the people. The room fell silent as a massive digital map of the globe appeared behind him, each region lighting up with the ever-growing nodes of the Access Plus network. The sovereign network was unlike anything the world had seen. It would not just provide decentralized financial transactions, but would offer a full range of services, everything from decentralized education platforms to blockchain-based healthcare, voting systems, and decentralized governance. As Elon spoke, a video montage played, showing real-life stories from around the globe. In Argentina, a small business owner used Access Plus to bypass crippling inflation, allowing her to pay suppliers and employees fairly. In Kenya, a mother used Access Plus to send remittances home without the high fees associated with traditional banks. In India, students accessed online education courses on a platform hosted by the sovereign network, using cryptocurrency as payment without worrying about inflation or the volatility of traditional currencies. This, Elon continued, is the beginning of a new kind of world, one where we, the people, have full control over our destinies. This is a world where you are no longer at the mercy of inflationary currencies, where the global financial system is not just run by a few powerful elites, but by everyone. As the final words echoed through the auditorium, the response from the audience was electric. Some cheered, others raised their phones to capture the moment. But for those watching from the other side of the screen, government officials, bankers, and industry leaders, the reaction was far more severe. Within moments of the live stream, politicians in the US, Europe, and Asia began issuing public statements condemning the launch. They referred to the sovereign network as an existential threat to global stability and accused Elon Musk of promoting anarchy. The U.S. Congress quickly convened a special session, with lawmakers calling for a new round of emergency legislation to prevent the further growth of decentralized platforms. In the European Union, finance ministers urgently met to draft a coordinated response, while the International Monetary Fund, IMF, warned that Access Plus and its sovereign network could cause unprecedented economic chaos. But despite the backlash, Elon remained unfazed. He had always known that such resistance was inevitable. The system he was challenging had been built over centuries, and no change of this magnitude would come without significant opposition. As Access Plus prepared to roll out the sovereign network to the world, a new phase of the battle began. One that was not just about financial dominance, but about ideological warfare. Governments and financial elites had united to stop the spread of decentralized finance, but the people who had embraced Access Plus were not backing down. It was clear that Access Plus was no longer just a financial tool. It had become a movement, a beacon of freedom and opportunity for millions who had been excluded from the global financial system for too long. In response to the government crackdown, a series of mass protests broke out in cities around the world. Tens of thousands of people gathered in major capitals like Washington, D.C., London, Berlin, and Tokyo. They marched, held signs, and chanted slogans demanding their right to financial autonomy. "No more banks, no more borders," echoed through the streets. For many, this wasn't just about Access Plus. It was about reclaiming power from the financial institutions that had held it for too long. As the protests grew, so did the international pressure on Access Plus. Corporations began pulling their funding, and global exchanges began delisting Access Plus as cryptocurrency. But despite these setbacks, the sovereign network continued to grow, unofficially, in secret, on private networks and through underground communities that had already seen the potential of a truly decentralized economy. One evening, Elon Musk received a call. It was from a global coalition of activists and business leaders who had been working behind the scenes to support the growth of decentralized finance. They had a plan, a massive, coordinated campaign to support Access Plus by driving adoption in sectors that had long been disenfranchised by the traditional financial system. The coalition strategy was simple: work from the ground up. By focusing on countries with the highest levels of financial exclusion, they would offer a decentralized, autonomous alternative that could provide access to banking services, credit, and even basic economic participation for the unbanked. They would create a network of local businesses, activists, and community leaders who would help teach the masses how to use Access Plus as decentralized finance tools. In return, they would offer real-world value, starting with discounted goods, services, and education. Elon, ever the risk-taker, immediately supported the plan. This was their chance to show the world the real value of decentralized finance, not just as a digital currency, but as a lifeline for millions of people who had been left behind by the traditional banking system. The coalition worked quickly, rallying support and organizing resources. Within weeks, Access Plus saw an explosion of new users, particularly in regions where financial systems had failed to provide adequate support. Access Plus began offering microloans, enabling people to start businesses, build credit, and improve their lives. The sovereign network, once a theoretical concept, was now being realized in the real world. As Access Plus gained more ground, the global powers responded with increasing desperation. The financial institutions and governments that had opposed Access Plus were now scrambling to figure out how to shut it down. The threat of widespread adoption of decentralized finance had become too much for them to ignore. They could no longer rely solely on legislation or regulation to contain the movement. In an unexpected move, the world's largest financial institutions launched a massive cyber attack against Access Plus. The attack was sophisticated, designed to cripple the decentralized network by targeting the blockchain itself. For the first time, Elon and the Access Plus team faced the full force of their adversaries. But what the institutions had underestimated was the resilience of the sovereign network. Built on a decentralized system, it was designed to withstand such attacks. Within hours, Access Plus' engineers and a global network of volunteers had countered the assault, repairing nodes, resecuring transactions, and keeping the system running smoothly. It was a defining moment for Access Plus, the first time it had truly been tested in the crucible of global resistance. As the cyber attack subsided and the system returned to normal, Elon Musk addressed the world. "They tried to take us down," he said, "but they didn't understand something fundamental. The power of decentralized finance is not just in the technology. It's in the people. And when the people unite, nothing can stop them." The battle for the future of finance was far from over, but it was clear that Access Plus had reached the tipping point. The sovereign network was no longer just a dream. It was a reality, and its impact was only just beginning to unfold. The fight for financial freedom had begun, and the world would never be the same again. As the world continued to reel from the fallout of the cyber attack, a new reality began to set in. The sovereign network had survived its first true test, and the aftermath reverberated far beyond the boundaries of Access Plus. For the first time, people saw the power of decentralized finance not just as an alternative, but as a force capable of challenging the global financial system. Elon Musk's words, "When the people unite, nothing can stop them," became a rallying cry. The message was clear. Decentralized finance wasn't just a business venture. It was a movement. And like any powerful movement, it was beginning to gather momentum that no one could easily stop. While the sovereign network was being attacked in the West, it was thriving in the global South. Countries where financial systems were either underdeveloped or stifled by corrupt institutions were beginning to embrace Access Plus. For many people, it wasn't just about getting better banking services. It was about gaining the financial autonomy that had long been denied to them. In countries like Brazil, South Africa, and Indonesia, Access Plus had become more than just a platform. It was a lifeline. People who had never had access to a bank account were now able to participate in the global economy. Small businesses were flourishing as they gained access to microloans. Students, once excluded from higher education due to lack of resources, now found affordable courses and scholarships through decentralized platforms powered by the sovereign network. One such story came from a young woman named Aisha, living in rural Pakistan. Aisha had always dreamed of starting her own business, but the local banking system was a nightmare. The high interest rates, complicated paperwork, and the constant risk of being scammed made it impossible for her to even begin. Then, she discovered Access Plus. Within weeks, she was able to apply for a microloan in a matter of minutes, with terms that were fair and transparent. Her business, an online store selling handmade crafts, took off, not just locally, but globally. Aisha was not just a customer. She was a pioneer, leading her community toward financial independence. Elon Musk and his team recognized that the real potential of decentralized finance lay in these regions. The people in these countries, struggling against the rigidity and corruption of their financial systems, were ready for change. They didn't need to be convinced. They were already on board. But as the movement grew, so did the resistance. Governments that once brushed off Access Plus as a passing fad were now on the offensive. The U.S. government, in particular, ramped up its efforts, citing national security risks and calling for global cooperation to shut down decentralized platforms. A coordinated international effort began, involving everything from heavy fines to criminal investigations into Access Plus and its affiliates. While Access Plus had proven resilient against cyber attacks, the pressure from governments was another story entirely. Elon was increasingly targeted, and his companies faced unprecedented levels of scrutiny. Behind closed doors, Powerful figures in traditional finance were secretly plotting their next move. Banks, insurance companies, and hedge funds were forming alliances, determined to maintain their stranglehold on global finance. They understood that they couldn't compete with the decentralized model on equal terms. They had to fight dirty. Meanwhile, Access Plus faced mounting challenges in keeping its network safe from hostile governments and rogue actors. The fight was no longer just about innovation, it was about survival. Despite the constant battles on every front, Elon Musk remained optimistic. He knew that the only way to win this war was to continue expanding the sovereign network and bring more people into the fold. But this would require more than just pushing through government resistance or fighting back against cyber attacks. It would require the establishment of global partnerships and an army of decentralized supporters willing to fight for their economic freedom. Elon gathered a team of trusted allies, business leaders, activists, and technologists to form what he called the Global DeFi Coalition. The coalition's mission was to educate the world about the benefits of decentralized finance and advocate for the necessary legal frameworks to protect users while ensuring freedom from centralized control. The coalition's first step was to host an open global summit, not unlike the one held in New York, but this time it would be held virtually, inviting everyone to participate regardless of location or resources. The aim was to show the world that decentralized finance wasn't just for the wealthy elite. It was for everyone. But as the summit date approached, Elon realized that the stakes were even higher than he had imagined. The forces aligned against Access Plus were pulling out all the stops. Governments were cracking down on cryptocurrency exchanges, private wallets were being monitored, and anyone associated with decentralized finance was increasingly viewed as a threat. Elon, however, was never one to back down. He made a bold move. He would take the fight directly to the heart of the financial world. Elon had secured the opportunity to address the U.S. Congress in an open hearing, rare and unprecedented opportunity for him to directly make the case for decentralized finance. It was a moment that could change everything. The day of the hearing arrived, and Elon Musk walked into the Grand Chamber with a sense of purpose. He was no longer just the founder of SpaceX or Tesla. He was now the face of a global revolution. The room was filled with the usual political figures, but there were also a growing number of technology experts, financial analysts, and curious onlookers. The session began with a series of hostile questions from members of Congress, who wasted no time challenging Elon's vision of a decentralized future. They accused him of seeking to disrupt the global order, of putting nations at risk, and of creating a financial system that could not be regulated or controlled. Elon remained calm. He had anticipated these attacks, and he knew how to counter them. "Let me ask you this," Elon said, his voice steady but resolute. "Why is it that in 2024, millions of people in this world still don't have access to basic banking services? Why is it that the traditional financial system is designed to keep people in debt and prevent them from accessing opportunities? Why is it that the rich continue to get richer, while the rest of the world is left behind?" The room fell silent. Elon's words hung in the air, challenging everything that the politicians and financial elites had built their careers upon. "The truth is," he continued, "this is not about power. This is about freedom. It's about giving everyone the chance to build a better future. Access Plus and the Sovereign Network are not here to destroy the system. They're here to replace a broken system with one that works for everyone." Elon's testimony was a masterstroke. He didn't just defend Access Plus. He made the case for decentralized finance as the next step in human progress. The hearing, streamed live, sparked a worldwide conversation. People from all corners of the globe began to ask themselves the same question. Was it time for a change? And if so, how could they be part of it? The tide was turning. The final confrontation was nearing its peak. Elon Musk had lit the fuse, and the world would never be the same again. As the days passed after Elon Musk's historic testimony before Congress, a sense of inevitability began to take root across the globe. The battle for financial freedom was no longer just an abstract concept. It had become a living, breathing movement, one that was growing stronger by the day. The Sovereign Network and Access Plus were no longer just tools for a select few. They were now part of a global revolution. The hearing had sent shockwaves through the political and financial establishment, but it had also ignited a spark among the global public. The world's population, particularly the younger generation, was waking up to the power of decentralized finance. People were no longer content to be passive consumers of a system that had left them powerless for generations. Elon Musk, though exhausted from the months of back and forth with global powers, felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about Access Plus or any one technology, it was about something far bigger. It was about creating a future where individuals had control over their own destinies. A future where anyone, anywhere, could participate in the global economy without fear of being excluded, manipulated, or oppressed. In the wake of the congressional hearing, there was an explosion of grassroots support for decentralized finance. Online forums, social media platforms, and local activist groups began spreading the message of Access Plus far and wide. What started as a niche technology project had evolved into a full-fledged movement for economic equality and personal autonomy. The sovereign network's adoption skyrocketed, especially in developing regions. People were no longer just using decentralized finance for basic transactions. They were using it to disrupt entire industries. In Africa, Access Plus helped revolutionize the agriculture industry, providing small-scale farmers with the ability to transact without relying on corrupt intermediaries. In Southeast Asia, digital currency platforms began to replace outdated banking infrastructure, allowing people to send remittances and access financial services for the first time. But the most powerful change was happening in the minds of the people. They had been conditioned to believe that the financial system was something they had no control over, something that was immutable and eternal. But now, they saw the possibility of a different future, one where they could build, create, and participate in ways they had never imagined. Elon Musk, for his part, remained grounded in his mission. He didn't want to be seen as a savior or hero. He simply wanted to give people the tools they needed to take control of their own lives. "I'm not here to change the world," Elon said in a rare public interview. "I'm here to give people the power to change it themselves." However, with the rise of Access Plus and the sovereign network came an increasingly desperate response from the established powers. The global financial institutions and governments that had fought so hard to stop the movement were stepping up their efforts. Their tactics ranged from outright criminalization of decentralized finance platforms to the creation of new, more oppressive regulations aimed at stifling innovation. But Access Plus had proven its resilience. Despite the growing opposition, it continued to gain ground. Governments that had once threatened to ban cryptocurrencies were now scrambling to adapt. Some nations, including parts of Europe and Asia, began to see the benefits of decentralization and started working on regulatory frameworks that would allow decentralized finance to coexist with traditional systems. However, it was the U.S. government that remained the most entrenched in its opposition. President Daniels, who had publicly condemned the sovereign network, found himself under intense pressure. On one side, powerful financial interests pushed him to take a harder stance against decentralized finance. On the other side, public opinion was shifting, and he could no longer ignore the growing number of citizens who supported the movement. President Daniels' decision would be pivotal. Would he continue to fight the decentralized movement, risking alienating a generation of voters? Or would he acknowledge the reality that the world was changing, and that decentralization was a force he could no longer control? In a surprise move, President Daniels called a summit of world leaders. It would be the first of its kind, a global conference to address the rise of decentralized finance and the future of the financial system. The purpose was clear: to either find a way to regulate the new technology or to dismantle it entirely. The summit took place in Geneva, Switzerland, with representatives from every major nation. Elon Musk was invited to speak, but he wasn't the only one. Industry leaders from traditional finance, government regulators, activists, and economists were all present, creating a volatile mix of viewpoints. The atmosphere was tense as world leaders gathered to debate the future of global finance. On one side were the traditional banking elites, who still held most of the wealth and power. On the other side were a growing number of activists, entrepreneurs, and technologists who saw decentralized finance as the future, a means of creating an equitable world where individuals, not institutions, held the power. Elon stood at the podium, his usual calm demeanor masking the weight of the moment. His words would determine not just the future of Access Plus, but the future of financial systems worldwide. "I understand that for many of you, Decentralized finance is frightening, Elon began. It's a challenge to everything you've known. But let me be clear. Access Plus is not a threat to global order. It is a tool for equality. It's not a competitor to traditional systems. It's a complement. The old systems failed billions of people. It's time to build something that works for everyone, not just the privileged few. The room erupted in applause from the activists and tech leaders in attendance, but many others were less convinced. Governments around the world had seen the rise of cryptocurrencies and decentralized networks as a threat to their authority. The conversation became increasingly heated. Mr. Musk, you cannot be serious, a representative from the European Union argued. Your network could destabilize national economies. We cannot allow a few companies to hold the fate of billions in their hands. Elon's response was calm yet firm. The financial systems you've relied on have already destabilized entire nations. The only thing that keeps people in poverty is the inability to participate in the global economy. Access Plus is providing people with a way to escape that cycle. As the summit continued, it became clear that a new consensus was forming. While many nations and financial institutions were still hesitant, others were beginning to acknowledge the inevitability of change. The future of finance was no longer just a theoretical debate. It was a real, tangible force that could no longer be ignored. By the time the summit concluded, the world had shifted. Though no single resolution emerged, the dialogue had opened the door to new possibilities. Governments began to take decentralized finance more seriously, with some countries even moving toward regulatory frameworks that would allow decentralized systems to flourish. The world, it seemed, was ready to embrace the new paradigm. In the aftermath of the summit, Elon Musk took a moment to reflect. The battle was far from over, but the seeds had been planted. The global financial system would never be the same again. He looked out over the bustling world outside his office window. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in history, it felt within reach. A future where individuals, not institutions, held the power to determine their own fate. And in that moment, Elon knew this was only the beginning.